Hey folks, I just want to give a shout out to the author of tonight's story, Static Voices. He also has a channel where he narrates horror stories. Make sure to go check him out. A link will be in the description below. I'm a police officer in a small town. I've stopped trying to make sense of the calls. Yes, that does sound very cliche, but I don't care. It's true. I've been on the job for about 12 years. I've been patrolling this town for about 3 of those years. I'm not going to say where the town is because I do not want to face any backlash from the higher-ups. The department has opinions on what gets talked about. Just know that this town is a place where everyone knows everyone. If anything interesting happens, expect everyone to have heard about it in 20 or so minutes. When I first started working in this town, I treated it like every other place I've worked at. I was friendly but stern when I needed to be. I wanted to make everyone feel safe and like they could reach out to me if they needed. That would have been fine if this place was normal. And as you could have guessed, it's not. Things happen here that, if they were to happen anywhere else, it would be all over the news and internet. Everything here is kept in-house, for the most part. Occasionally, we do get help from a nearby church and psychic, but those are stories for another day when I have a lot more time. For now, I'll just touch on a few of the weird happenings that occur here. I guess I'll start from when I first got transferred here. Oh yeah, coming here was not my decision. It was kind of a voluntold situation. It was strongly suggested that I come here because of how I handled chaotic situations in the past. I was under the impression this was a step in the right direction for my career, a way to get in the boss's good graces. That was my first of many wrong assumptions when it came to this town. When I hear about my first day, of course you do. You wouldn't have gotten this far otherwise. I was excited about the change in scenery. It was a fresh start for me. So when I strolled into the precinct that first night, I had my head high and a smile plastered across my face. The first thing I noticed was how oddly quiet it was. There was no desk officer sitting behind the desk, and the sergeant's office door was closed. I awkwardly made my way to the locker room to put on my freshly pressed uniform. It was there that I had my first interaction with someone who works here. For story purposes, we shall call him Officer Brad. Actually, no, Steve. We'll call him Steve. Steve was an older cop. He was what we'd like to call a salty vet. He would get bothered real easily over nonsense. He had just finished putting on his gun belt as I was walking in. Trying to make a good impression, I went up to introduce myself. Hey, how's it going? I'm Chris. Just transferred in. It's my first shift. Steve looked at me with zero expression on his face. I'm talking not even an eyebrow raise. After what felt like 30 seconds, he finally responded. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, off to a great start, I thought. Yeah, how is it here? Anything I should be aware of? Yes, lots of things you should familiarize yourself with. I was waiting for the second half of that sentence, hoping he would tell me what to get familiar with exactly. Instead, he just kind of brushed past me and walked out. I figured he was just counting down the days to retirement and chalked up him being an asshole to that. After finding my locker and putting on my uniform, I headed back toward the desk to try and locate my patrol car keys. To my surprise, there was still no one seated behind the desk. Every place that I've worked at, it was mandatory to always have someone behind the desk. You needed someone to dispatch, receive calls, or handle walk-ins. But here, I was standing alone at the desk. I figured I would try and find the sergeant. As I approached the office, I noticed something that wasn't there before. There was a note taped to the door. Keys in visor. Car parked out back. Alright, I said to myself. I headed toward the back door expecting to run into some more cops at the very least. But it was like no one else was in the building. When I reached the patrol car, I was let down to say the least. The car was in horrible shape, dents on the body and scratches on the window. Guess that's what you get when you work in a small town, I thought. I opened the door, and sure as shit, the keys were in the visor. I put the keys in the ignition, and the engine coughed to life. I turned on the car radio and pulled out to the road to start my first shift. Before I continue with details for my first shift, I want you to understand how strange this all was. Normally, when you start your shift, there is a roll call. Think of it as attendance in school, basically a way to make sure you are there. There are also post assignments that are supposed to be given out. None of this happened. Not only did none of that happen, but when I say no one else was in the building, I mean no one. Not just desk officers or supervisors. I'm talking no other cops beside Salty Steve. Not even a cleaning crew. Once I had my keys, I really just wanted to leave that building. Night 1 was pretty quiet for the first half. Not a single call. I actually thought my radio was off or broken with how quiet it was. I even tried keying up the radio just to make sure it worked. And it gave an audible beep, which let me know it was in fact working. I was about 3 hours into my shift when I heard the radio go off.
Unit 1 on the air.
I didn't answer because I had no idea what my post designation was. I thought maybe it might be somebody else.
Unit 1, come up on the air.
Radio silence.
Chris?
I wasn't expecting that. No one has ever dispatched me by my first name. It was always officer, insert last name, or my post. I fumbled the microphone and responded. Go for Unit 1.
Yeah, that's you. Got a job for you.
Copy. Go with it.
Head over about 2 blocks. You'll see a blue house with its porch light on. A man will be waiting outside for you. He called 911 stating his wife isn't feeling well. EMS is about 5 minutes out. Check and advise once you're on scene.
Roger. Show me responding. I arrived on scene 5 minutes after dispatch sent me. There was a man standing outside of a blue house flagging me down. I put the car in park and walked over to the house. Evening, officers. Thank you for your timely response. Sure thing. What's going on? It's my wife. She's sick. It started out as a cold, but it's gotten a bit worse. Oh great. Let me be her hero and grab her a tissue box. I see. Is there anything else? Is she throwing up? Anything that requires immediate attention? Nope, just that, officers. Just not feeling well. But I would really appreciate if you could go and check on her. Alright, the first time I brushed it off. Why was he saying officers? It was only me, no one else was on scene. She's right inside. Bedroom is the first door on the right. The lights in the house were on, but dim. Before I stepped inside, I radioed over to dispatch. Unit 1 to dispatch. I'm on scene. Gentleman is stating his wife isn't feeling well. I'm gonna step inside and make sure she's okay while I wait for EMS. No response from dispatch. I took a cautious step inside and headed for the bathroom. As I approached the door, I felt the husband walking slowly behind me. I stepped to the side. Why don't you lead the way? You know your house better than me. Shirley. He stepped in front of me and reached for the door handle. Fair warning, she's a bit tired. She hasn't been able to get much sleep with this damn cold. Got it, I responded. As the door opened, I could see the bed was disheveled. The blankets were thrown about and the pillows were on the floor. With that being said, I didn't see this sick woman. All I saw was an empty bed. As I stepped into the room, I was immediately working up a sweat. The bedroom was so unbelievably hot. It was like stepping into a sauna. I asked him where his wife was, and before he could answer, I heard someone behind the door. I'm right here, silly. I jumped out of my skin, not expecting a sickly woman to be on her feet hiding behind a door. Jesus, what the hell are you doing? She frowned. I can't sleep, she responded in a childlike voice. Okay, ma'am, I'm going to need you to sit down on the bed. EMS is coming to evaluate you and help you out. Oh, let's play a game. Up for some hide and seek? What the hell was going on? This woman who was supposed to be sick was not only standing up but pacing around her room, all while her husband stood idly by, just smiling. I'll hide first, and you have to find me, the woman said. Her eyes were open as wide as I've ever seen. Oh, she's really good at this game. She always picks the best spots. You guys could never find her. What the fuck was happening? This had to be some sort of new guy hazing. It had to be. Either that or these people were out of their fucking minds. The woman sprinted out of her room, giggling and screaming, "You'll never find me." Go on, officers. Find her before she finds you. She hates when you don't play the game right. Yep. Nope. I got the fuck out of there. I 100% ran back to my car and radioed dispatch to send another unit. Just as I had finished my transmission, EMS pulled up. Do not go in there. This woman is batshit crazy. EMS just stared at me. You're new here, huh? What? Yes. Well, no. New here, not new to the job. It doesn't matter. I know fucking crazy when I see it. Nah, they do this. We will give her a trank, and this won't happen for another week or two. And with that, EMS entered the house, and I sat there in shock. Sure enough, a few minutes later, they were back outside and heading back into their truck. You'll get used to it. A lot of weird shit happens around here. Just understand that this was a tame incident. Yeah, got it. Thanks. See ya, Chris. That was the first night of my time here. As you could imagine, I definitely have some more stories. If you're interested, I'd be happy to share some more. So, you want to hear more stories? Bunch of sickos on here, huh? I understand it though. These stories are interesting for anyone not experiencing them on a regular basis. And I'll be honest, although I'm used to the weirdness that is policing this town, when I was first going through these experiences, I was scared. It does feel good to finally get this all off my chest and out in the open. Believe it or not, after the first incident and my first real experience of the precinct, things calmed down. Okay, let me rephrase. I was still showing up to an empty precinct. There was never anyone behind the desk. The sergeant's office was always closed, and the only interaction I had with anyone was Salty Steve brushing past me or muttering some one-off line that always came off as creepy and not helpful at all. But besides that, things were pretty mundane. Show up to work, change into my uniform, read the note on the sergeant's door that let me know where my patrol keys were, and explained my assignment for the night. Yeah, one really annoying aspect of this place was that my keys always ended up in a different spot. Sometimes the note would say, check the third drawer on the right behind the desk for your keys. Other times it would say, head to the bathroom on the second floor and look behind the toilet of the second stall. Honestly, pretty annoying. After a couple of shifts of routine calls and nothing too out of the ordinary, I was starting to get accustomed to this place. That lasted about 5 minutes. I was strolling into work just like every other shift. I walked past the empty desk, and before I reached the locker room, I stopped dead in my tracks. I turned my head and stopped breathing so I could listen. I heard talking. Not only talking but laughing. A group of people laughing, muffled by the closed locker room door. Normal talking and laughing was suddenly the strangest thing I'd come across. I slowly opened the door, and sure as shit, the voices were more clear and the laughter was louder. I rounded the corner and I saw them. A group of cops, about 4 or 5, similar to myself in age, some older, some younger. They all turned toward me, and I did what any normal person would do. I awkwardly froze there and stumbled over my words. Hi, hey, what's up? I'm Chris, just transferred in a week and a half ago. Didn't think anyone else worked here besides me and Steve. They just stared at me, not saying a word. Just as I was about to speak again, one of them began to laugh, which caused a chain reaction of laughter through the rest of the group. Shit, I even laughed without thinking. What's up, Chris? The leader of the group held out his hand. Just busting your chops. Yeah, Salty Steve keeps to himself, but he ain't the only one that works here. We were teaching down at the academy, but they didn't require our services anymore. So here we are, back to this lovely town. Well, that is actually refreshing to hear. I was beginning to think it would be me and good old Steve for the rest of my career, I said with a friendly smile. Huh, yeah, sorry. Guess you aren't so lucky. Anyway, Chris, we'll see you out there. Don't be late for roll call. Roll call? Nope, we don't have those here, I thought. Then again, maybe I was wrong. I didn't think anyone else worked here, and clearly I was wrong about that. So, I kind of just assumed the best. After getting changed, I headed out of the locker room to see what I was missing, only to bump into Steve. Hey man, I finally met the rest of the guys. I thought it was just you and me riding off into the sunset. Steve looked at me, confused. What the hell are you talking about, kid? The guys that were helping with training at the academy, they're back now. Just met them in the locker room. A smile crept across Steve's face. Oh, the guys, huh? Yeah, they aren't real. Well, they were at one point, but they aren't really here anymore. Steve continued past me to the locker room without saying another word. I proceeded to walk around the building looking for the group of guys that I just saw in the locker room, and they were nowhere to be found. But I did find a note on the sergeant's door as always. Keys in the visor, car parked out back. I began patrol that night, just like any other night, driving, making the usual rounds when all of a sudden, dispatch came through.
Unit 1 on the air?
Go for Unit 1.
There is a motor vehicle accident about 6 blocks over from you. We are requesting you to stand by for 10 minutes before responding.
10 minutes? That's ridiculous. Someone could have been seriously injured. Go again, dispatch? I don't think I heard the transmission correctly. Silence.
Do not respond for 10 minutes.
Why? That is not how I operate as a police officer. I do my job. I do it well. I respond to what I'm dispatched to. But 10 minutes? Not a chance I was going to sit on my ass and wait. I arrived on scene about 8 minutes after dispatch originally called. I was hauling ass in hopes nobody was hurt. Problem was, I didn't see anybody. There was no car, no pedestrian standing by, no smoke, no tire marks. There was no motor vehicle accident. Dispatch, I'm on scene. Out of nowhere, a car came barreling down the block going at least 50 and was heading straight for a tree. Without braking, the car slammed into the tree with such impact I felt the ground under me shake. I sprinted to the car without thinking. Whoever was in there was going to need medical attention as soon as possible. Just as I approached, my heart dropped to my stomach. Through the rear window, I could see a car seat. If there was a child in the car, I wasn't sure how I would be able to handle it. But I certainly knew that there was no time to sit back and wonder how I was going to feel. I reached for the driver's door, ready to give first aid to whoever needed it. Shockingly, no one needed any sort of medical attention. No one was in the car. The car was totaled, but no one was inside. I checked the driver's seat, the passenger, the floor, the car seat, all buckled, but no one inside. My heart was racing. Sweat was pouring from my head. I called into dispatch. Dispatch, I'm on scene of the accident, but no one is inside.
You didn't wait, did you? I can hear it in your voice.
What? No, I responded. I was doing my job. Dispatch took a few seconds to respond.
No, you did what you wanted. You were dispatched to a job and given instructions. You failed to follow those instructions and nearly had a heart attack in the process.
Why? How is no one inside?
From now on, listen to what we tell you. It's for your own good. We are sending a tow truck to your location. Stand by and wait for it.
I didn't know what else to do, so I waited. About 15 minutes later, a tow truck arrived. The driver hopped out with his hat low and approached the car. Yeah, this one is rough. The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it until he turned toward me. It was the same EMS worker from my first night. Too shocked to ask questions and too confused by what I had just witnessed from the accident, I walked to my patrol car. I sat there for a while, unsure of how to handle everything that had just taken place. I eventually ended up back at the empty precinct, changed my clothes, and went home. You may be asking, Chris, this is dumb. Why wouldn't you just call one of your higher-ups, report what's going on? And my answer to you would be, I tried. That is something I don't want to get into right now. Maybe eventually. For now, I gotta go. I was just dispatched to another job. So like I said, I did try to contact the higher-ups. I wanted to let them know what was happening here. I reached out to sergeants, lieutenants, anyone who would listen. I wanted someone above me to tell me what this place was. Every single time I was met with the same type of response, a refusal to elaborate on this place, a careful practiced unwillingness to talk about it. These are people I genuinely trusted, so when I initially called, I thought I would get some answers. First person I called was my old lieutenant. We had a great working relationship. He knew I was a hard worker and produced for the precinct, so essentially I always made him look good.
Chris, long time no talk. How have you been?
Hey Lou. Well, if I'm being honest, not great. Things have been happening here. Really weird situations that I can't really explain.
Where did you transfer to again?
The 3rd precinct. You know, the small town. He was quiet for longer than he should have been. Lou?
I'm not familiar.
Huh, you've been all over the job. I'm sure you know it.
No, I don't. Listen, I have to go.
Oh, come on, you joking? Give me something here. I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Chris, don't call me again.
And just like that, our conversation was over. I tried calling him back once, but I was blocked. That is how pretty much every conversation about this town went. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Hell, they flat out refused to continue the conversation after a mere mention of this town. With no other place to get answers, I turned to the one person who I knew had gone through the ringer in this town. Salty Steve. Was it going to be awkward? Yes. Was he going to give me actual answers? Probably not. But guess what? I didn't have anywhere else to go. My imaginary sergeant with impeccable handwritten notes was certainly not going to help. And the crew of no longer real ghosts from the locker room weren't chomping at the bit to break bread. So Steve was literally my only option. So the next time I saw Steve, I walked right up to him and started asking questions. Steve, I know you don't like me. I know you don't care what I have to say. I'm asking anyway. What the fuck is wrong with this town? Steve looked at me but didn't say anything. Of course, no one has anything to say about this place. I'm just supposed to keep on trucking along like everything is great. I'm just supposed to pretend that cars crashing by themselves and fucking car keys magically appearing around the precinct is just run-of-the-mill. Unbelievable. Angry and once again without answers, I turned to walk away. I got about 3 feet before I heard the gruff voice behind me. First few are the hardest. What? First few jobs are the hardest. You think you're being a good cop, but your definition of that has to change. There is no overarching reason these things happen. I have seen things that a man is never prepared for, things that will never leave the inner workings of my mind. What do you mean my definition has to change? I mean being a good cop is no longer about taking charge, getting answers, and stopping crime. It's about listening. It's about following what you are told. Dispatch. They aren't preventing you from doing your job. They're protecting you. Protecting me? From what? What the hell is this place? I know your type. I was your type. You're good at your job, and you're hard-headed. You tend not to listen. I didn't listen either. Asked questions, made my calls. That was 31 years ago. You think I'm still here because I love the work? After that, we both just stood there. Unsure of what to say, I didn't say anything. Neither did Steve. He walked past me without another word.
Unit 1 on the air.
Without hesitation, I keyed up the radio. Go for Unit 1.
Respond to the abandoned apartment building 3 blocks from the gas station. A priest from a nearby church will be waiting for you there. Help him with whatever he needs.
I pulled up to the address, and before I even had the door closed behind me, he was there. Tall, older, dressed exactly how you'd picture. He spoke like he was addressing a congregation of one. Hello, Christopher. Thank you for accompanying me. You're welcome. Accompanying you to what exactly? To put it simply, we are here to keep something at bay. To keep something at bay. Okay, what exactly are we dealing with here? He didn't answer. He just turned toward the building. Follow me, Christopher. The building was derelict, boarded windows on the first floor. My flashlight was the only thing cutting through the dark, and the beam felt smaller in there than it should have. The elevators were dead, obviously, so we took the stairs. That's where I started clocking things. Dark stains on the steps that I've seen enough times on the job to not need a lab report. Chunks of the railing snapped off, gouges in the wall. I've walked into a lot of buildings that told me a story on the way in. This one was telling me to leave. Hey, Father, don't want to question you, but where are we going? There is an apartment on the 3rd floor. There is a resident we must make sure cannot leave the building. Wait, what? Someone living here? And we have to make sure they stay? Christopher, to put it nicely, this is above your pay grade. I need a witness for the ceremony, and you are the only one available tonight. That seems to be the running theme. I am the only one ever available. And don't think I brushed past the whole ceremony part. I heard him, but what was I going to do? Steve just gave me his version of a goodwill hunting speech, and I'll be damned if I was going to be stuck in this town for as long as he was, so I did what I was told. I followed the priest to the apartment on the 3rd floor. The series of events that took place there are something I will never be comfortable with. We stopped at the last door at the end of the hall, apartment 3C. I could hear voices inside, multiple, overlapping like a crowded room with the TV on. And then, cutting through all of it, a woman screamed. 12 years of training kicked in, and I stepped toward that door without thinking. The priest's arm shot out across my chest. Christopher, whatever you hear in there, you will follow my instructions exactly. Do not be fooled. Fooled by what? He didn't answer. He reached out and opened the door, and the second it cracked, the apartment erupted. A chorus of screams, men, women, high, low, all of them at once, coming from everywhere and nowhere. My flashlight was up, and my other hand was on my gun, for whatever good either was going to do. The apartment itself was empty. Dust and bare walls. All of it, every voice was coming from behind a single bedroom door. The priest stopped a few feet from it and spoke through the door, calm, almost polite. It is time. You know why I am here. The voices stopped, all of them. Then one voice, low, from just on the other side. You brought someone new. A pause. I could hear it breathing. I can smell the fear on him. The priest pulled a small bottle from his coat and began marking the doorframe. He was speaking, but not in any language I've ever heard. The words had a rhythm to them, like he'd said them 1,000 times. Then the thing behind the door changed its approach. Please, a little girl's voice, crying. Please, mister, I'm not supposed to be in here. He locked me in here. Please open the door. I didn't move. I want you to understand how hard that was. Every instinct I have, everything I've ever trained for, was pulling me toward that door. But I didn't go. I stood there, and I let it beg. The priest never stopped his prayer. And then it gave up on the girl. I'm sorry. I froze, because it was my voice, Exactly my voice. The way it sounds on body cam footage. The way it sounds when I leave a voicemail. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to save them. I tried. Over and over, my own voice apologizing through the door. The priest's prayer got louder, building towards something, and the thing behind the door lost whatever composure it had. It hit the door, then again, harder. The knob rattled like someone was trying to tear it off. The walls shook. Dust drifted down from the ceiling like snow. I took a step back with my hand tight on my gun, and the priest didn't so much as flinch. Then he said one final word, made a mark on the door, and everything stopped. Silence. Total. He turned to me like a man locking up a shop for the night. It is done. We must leave. We walked out of that building at a pace just under a run. Outside, the night was quiet. Crickets going like nothing was wrong with the world. The priest straightened his coat. "Good night, Christopher. Best of luck in your future endeavors." And he walked off into the dark. I've been back to that building 5 times since. It happens every 6 months, like clockwork. Same ceremony, same door. The voices are different every time. It's tried the girl again, an old man, a cop yelling officer down. Once it was my mother. Anyway, I'd tell you more, but the note on the sergeant's door says my keys are in the freezer of the break room tonight, so I have to go dig them out. More soon, probably. I've seen a few people asking if there are any other residents in this town. Unfortunately, the answer to that is yes. There were residents, but I truly wish I'd never crossed paths with any of them. As wild as it sounds, my work schedule became routine to me. One night, I arrived at work ready to start my shift. I made my way to the sergeant's office to see where my keys would be hiding that day. I grabbed a note from the door and it read, "Go home. You're working the morning shift tomorrow. You need some rest." I didn't bother questioning it. I didn't bother looking for Steve. I just left and came back for the morning shift at 6 a.m. I don't know what I was expecting, but in a weird way, I hoped that the morning shift would be different. Maybe there would be somebody at the precinct. Maybe I would see another car on the road. At first, everything was the same. No one around, just me and the stupid note. Surprisingly, the patrol car keys were hanging on the sergeant's office door. The note underneath was something that I didn't see coming. It was almost encouraging. "Cars parked out back. Your rookie is waiting in the passenger seat. Go out there, show him the ropes, and make a good impression." My rookie? No chance was somebody else going to be working here, let alone a rookie, and I had to train him? There's just no way this was going to be a good experience. I reluctantly made my way to the car, and wouldn't you know it, there he was. A bright, shiny rookie for me to mold. Great. Before I even got to the driver's side door, the rookie was out of the car standing at attention. Good morning, sir." "Is it though?" He didn't know what to say to that. "Dude, relax. I'm Chris. No need to be all formal." "I'm Ian, sir." Alright, this was going to be annoying. "No, sir, just Chris. Get in the car, Ian. I have a lot to teach you about this place." I began driving around the town slowly and pointing things out to Ian as best I could. I showed him where the closest gas station was. I showed him the abandoned building with the demonic entity inside. I showed him the fastest route out of the town, just in case, of course. Ian was sitting there writing things down in his little notepad, trying to get a grasp of what this place was. "Chris, can I ask you a question?" "Sure, go for it." "Where is everybody? Like in the station, I didn't see anyone else. Well, I heard a group of people laughing, but I didn't actually see them. In the academy, they told us about roll call and making a good impression for our sergeant. But as soon as I got there was a note in my locker telling me to wait in the patrol car. There are some things about this place that aren't going to make sense to you, so I'm going to tell you what I was told. Listen to whatever they say, The sergeant, dispatch, Salty Steve, anyone, keep your head down and listen. I'll do my best to guide you along the way. Who's Salty Steve? Oh, he's a real peach. A few hours went by and I basically showed him all I could. Could I have told him about the ghost co-workers or the insane couple that loves to play hide and seek? Yes, but he wasn't ready to hear that yet. I could tell. The radio crackled and dispatch chimed in.
Unit 1 on the air?
I sighed. Go for Unit 1.
There's a house 1 block away from you. We've gotten noise complaints from the neighbors, claiming there's a constant sound of a bell and what is believed to be laughter. Please check and advise and keep your rookie in check.
Copy. Show us responding. The house was 1 block away, just like dispatch said. It looked normal. That was my first problem with it. Nothing in this town looks normal, and the things that do are usually the worst. An old woman was standing in the doorway before we even parked, like she was expecting us. She waved with her whole arm. Officers? Oh, thank goodness. Come in, come in. I told Ian to stay behind me and let me do the talking. He nodded. He had his notepad out already. The inside of the house smelled like a church. Candles everywhere, all of them lit at 9 in the morning. She led us to the kitchen and kept talking the entire time, but the sentences didn't connect to each other. She would start telling us about her garden and end on her late husband's shoes. She asked if we wanted tea 3 separate times. Ma'am, we got a complaint about noise coming from this address. A bell, possibly some laughter. She smiled at me. The bell rings when they're happy, she said. You can't police happiness, officer. I asked who they were. She started talking about her garden again. I've learned to keep my eyes moving in this town, so while she talked, I looked. There was salt along the base of the kitchen doorway, a line on it, corner to corner. There were markings on the ceiling that I decided not to look at for very long, and somewhere below us, I heard the bell. 1 single ring. Then what sounded like a bunch of people trying not to laugh. Ian heard it too. I watched him tilt his head toward the basement door. The old woman stopped mid-sentence and looked at him. You hear them, she said. She sounded delighted. Oh, sweetheart, they almost never pick someone this fast. I stepped in front of Ian and told her we were done here, that she needed to keep the noise down and that we were leaving. I used my cop voice. It's worked on drunks, domestics, and 1 bar fight involving a machete. It didn't work on her. She just kept looking past me at Ian. Then she asked him, Would you like to see them, dear? They'd love to meet you. And here's the thing about rookies. They're trained to be helpful. They're trained to investigate. Nobody at the academy trains you to say no to a little old lady. Before I could grab his arm, Ian said the worst word I've ever heard another human being say. Sure. The basement door opened on its own. Nobody touched it. It just swung open like it had been listening. The bell downstairs started ringing and didn't stop, and Ian walked toward it like he was being carried. I grabbed for his vest and caught air. I don't know how I caught air. He was right there. The door shut behind him, and the ringing stopped. And then, the screaming started. I'm not going to describe the screaming. I've heard people scream on this job. Car accident, overdoses, a guy who got his hand caught in a wood chipper. This was different. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, Unit 1, I need immediate backup at this address. Officer in distress, I need everybody you've got. Dispatch came back before I finished the sentence. Calm. They're always calm.
Unit 1, leave the residence.
Dispatch, my rookie is in the basement. I can hear him. I need backup. Now!
Unit 1, leave the residence. Do not open that door.
The old woman had gone back to talking about her garden to no one. The screaming was still going. My hand was on the basement doorknob, and I stood in that kitchen and did the math I never wanted to do. Everything in this town that's still alive is alive because it listened. Steve told me that in his own way. The notes tell me that. I've survived here by listening. I let go of the knob. I'm sorry, I said, out loud, to the door. I walked out of that house, and I didn't look back. And when I got to the front step, the door closed behind me, softly. Nobody closed it. The radio crackled.
Unit 1, drive away.
I drove away. I drove away and didn't look back. I did what I was told to do. I did what dispatch wanted, and I was told dispatch is here to protect me. I didn't feel protected. No, I felt horrible. I felt the lowest a human being could feel. I didn't know Ian. I never really got the chance to. I let him go. And as much as that wasn't my choice, it felt like it was. I got back to the precinct and felt nothing. I was emotionally drained with no one to talk to. Before I could even process what had happened, there was one more note on the door of the office. Mention this to no one. Ian will not be forgotten, and his family will be taken care of. Ease your mind. There is nothing you could have done. He was gone the moment you stepped foot inside. Thinking about Ian is tough for me. I regret the decision dispatch made. Oh, fuck it. I regret the decision I made. I could have done something. I should have done something. There's more to tell. My stories aren't done just yet. The more that happened in this town, the more questions I had. I've stopped expecting answers, but that doesn't mean I stopped asking. I need to be honest with you all before I continue. Writing that last part did something to me. I thought getting Ian's story out would help. It didn't. It stirred everything back up. The bell, the door closing soft behind me, the math I did in that kitchen with my hands on the knob. Some of you left comments telling me it wasn't my fault. I appreciate it. I read every one of them. I don't believe a single word, but I appreciate it. So bear with me if this one reads a little rough. I'm writing because the alternative is sitting with it, and I'm done sitting with it. Work didn't stop. Work never stops. I kept showing up, kept reading the notes, kept finding my keys in whatever stupid hiding spot was picked that night. The calls kept coming too. I want to tell you about the weird ones. I do, but honestly, I barely remember them. A woman who reported her reflection missing. A traffic stop where the driver thanked me by a name that isn't mine, and I didn't bother correcting him. Something at the gas station that I'm not going to write down. I handled all of it the same way. Show up, listen to dispatch, do what they say, drive away. Steve passed me in the locker room about 2 weeks after it happened. He looked at me longer than he ever has, and I thought, here it comes, the speech. First one's the worst, kid. Instead, he just nodded, one time like he was confirming something. It was a night shift about 3 weeks after Ian. I walked past the empty desk like always and headed for the sergeant's office to find my note. I stopped dead in the middle of the hallway because I need you to understand what I was looking at. The door was open. Every shift since I transferred here, there's been a note taped to that door and nothing behind it. Or something behind it. I never knew which was worse. I've been dispatched to demons and car crashes that drive themselves, and I've never seen that door so much as cracked. Now it was standing wide open with the light on, and the light was just normal. Every instinct I have told me This was the most dangerous thing I'd ever seen in this town. I approached it the way you approach a car with tinted windows at 3 a.m. Slow, angled, one hand resting where it always rests. I stopped at the threshold and looked in. I don't know what I was expecting. It was an office, a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet, a coffee mug, a door in the back corner, half open, private bathroom. I could see the edge of a sink. The desk had paperwork on it, squared into neat little stacks, and the walls were covered in notes, pinned up corner to corner, hundreds of them. Every note I'd ever pulled off that door and hundreds more I'd never seen. Same handwriting on every single one. I remember thinking that handwriting looked familiar, not from the door, from somewhere else. I remember starting to figure out where I'd seen it before, and that's as far as I got, because that's when I heard whistling coming from the bathroom. I stepped inside. I want to tell you, something made me do it. Nothing made me. I stepped inside, both feet over the threshold, and the door slammed shut behind me, hard enough to rattle every note on the walls. The whistling stopped, and out of the bathroom, drying his hands on a paper towel like it was the most normal thing in the world, walked Ian. "Ah, you finally made it." I'd love to tell you I said something smart, something a 12-year vet would say. What actually came out of my mouth was closer to a grunt and stutter. Ian tossed the paper towel in the trash, walked around the desk, and sat down in the sergeant's chair like it was fitted for him. He looked exactly the same. I need to stress that. Same haircut from 3 weeks ago, same crease in his collar. There was even a pen sticking out of his chest pocket, the same one he took notes with in my car. "You're dead," I said. "I heard you. In that basement. I heard you." "You did," he said. "Sit down, Chris." No, you don't get to sit down, Chris me. You were screaming. I stood in that kitchen and I listened to you screaming, and I walked out the door." "I know," he said. "That's why the door's open." I didn't sit down. I stood there with my back against the wall of notes and made him talk. And to his credit, he talked. I'm going to give it to you the way he gave it to me, because I've been carrying it alone for long enough. Ian was never my rookie. There was no academy class. The kid I picked up in that parking lot, the one who called me sir and wrote everything down in his little notepad, has been working in this town since before I got here. A long time before. He wouldn't give me a number. When I pushed, he just said, "You'd handle the number worse than you're handling this. The people who die in this town don't leave it. Neither do the ones who get taken. The laughing cops in the locker room, the EMS guy who's also the tow guy, the desk that's never empty. Not really. Everyone who works here worked here before in one capacity or another, and then they didn't stop. Steve is the only one on the roster with a pulse, and Steve stopped asking questions 31 years ago, which is the only reason he still has one. And me, I was never transferred here because I was good in chaotic situations. That's the line they used. I was selected, and then I was watched, and then I was tested. Ian was the test. Everything I did with him counted. The town watched me to tell him to keep his head down, watched me show him the fastest way out just in case, watched me stand between him and that old woman. And then it watched the only part that mattered. It watched me put my hand on that basement doorknob, with him screaming on the other side of it, and take my hand off because dispatch told me to. "You listened," Ian said. "Everyone tells you to listen. Steve told you, dispatch told you, but anyone can listen when it's cheap. The town needed to know what you'd do when it costs you." "The screaming," I said. My voice didn't sound great. "Was that real? Did that happen to you?" Ian looked at me for a second, and for that 1 second, He looked like a rookie again. "It has to be real," he said. "It doesn't count if it isn't real." I asked the question I'd been chewing on since the door slammed. The one I'd asked Steve. The one I'd asked my old lieutenant. The one nobody in a year of asking has ever answered. "What is this town?" And Ian actually answered me. Not all of it. I could tell there was a floor he wouldn't go below. But he answered, and here's the shape of it. The town is where things are kept. The woman who wants to play hide and seek. The thing in apartment 3C. Whatever rings that bell. They don't come from here. They're brought here. Or they end up here, the way water ends up at a drain. And a town full of things like that needs staff. It needs someone to answer the calls, follow the response times, do the rounds, keep everything fed and bored and contained. It doesn't need heroes. Heroes open doors. It needs people who listen. The dead do most of the work because the dead have no choice, but the town always keeps one living officer on the roster. Ian wouldn't say why. There has to be one. Right now, it's Steve. And Steve is 31 years in, and Steve is tired. "So that's what this is," I said. "The open door. I passed, and now I'm next in line for Steve's job. I'm the next lifer." "No," Ian said. "You passed, so now you get a choice. Nobody gets a choice here, Chris. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Steve never got one. I never got one." He opened the top drawer of the desk, took out a folder, and slid it across to me. Transfer papers, real ones, my name, my shield number, a precinct number I actually recognize, 2 towns over from where I used to live, a commanding officer's signature that I've seen before on real paperwork in my real career, served with distinction, released. "You walk out of here with that folder," Ian said, "and it all closes behind you. You'll get a normal desk, a normal radio, normal calls. You'll remember this place less every year, until it's a bad taste you can't put a name to. The lieutenant will take your calls again. He won't remember why he ever stopped." I want to be honest with you because I promised myself when I started writing these that I'd be honest even when it makes me look bad. I wanted it. God, I wanted it. I stood there in a dead man's office holding my way out, and I thought about my old precinct, roll calls, a desk officer who exists, coffee that a living person made. I thought about it so hard I could smell it. My hand actually closed around the folder. Ian just watched me. He didn't try to stop me. That's the part I keep coming back to. Nobody in this town has ever needed to stop me from anything. They just wait. And while my hand was on that folder, while I was already half out the door in my head, the radio on Ian's desk crackled. It wasn't dispatch. Dispatch has a tone, a cadence, calm as a lake. This wasn't that.
"I'm sorry."
My whole body went cold, and it took me a second to understand why. Then I understood why. It was my voice.
"I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to save them. I tried."
My voice. Exactly my voice. The way it sounds on body cam. The way it sounds on a voicemail. Coming out of the sergeant's radio saying the words I heard through a door in an abandoned building on the 3rd floor. The words the thing behind that door said to me. Ian didn't look surprised. That was the worst part. He looked at the radio the way you looked at a clock. "The ceremony," he said. "Every 6 months. You've seen it 5 times. The priest does the ceremony. The priest is gone." I asked gone where. He didn't answer. I asked when the ceremony was due. "Tonight." The radio crackled again, and my own voice came through one more time, and I swear to you, it sounded closer.
"I know where Christopher.
Then silence. Ian stood up, straightened the stacks on the desk, and said the only thing anyone in this town has ever said to me that sounded like it cost them something. You've got the folder in your hand and a full tank of gas, and the town line is 9 minutes away. And if you drive there right now, nothing will follow you. That's the truth, and I'm allowed to tell it to you. Or, the keys are in the visor, and the car is parked out back. He looked at me. Nobody is going to dispatch you, Chris. Not tonight. Tonight, you dispatch yourself. I walked out to the parking lot behind the precinct, and I sat in that car for a long time. The folder was on the passenger seat. The keys were in the visor, right where the note would have said they'd be if anyone needed to leave me a note. The engine was running. From that lot, the road out of town was a left turn. The abandoned building was a right. 3 weeks earlier, I had stood in a kitchen and listened to a kid scream, because following instructions is how you survive this place. Everyone who told me that was right. I was alive because I listened. There were no instructions that night. I put the car in drive, and I turned right. Before I get into what happened, I want to answer the question I keep getting. Why did I stay? I've read every comment. Some of you think I'm brave. Some of you think I'm an idiot. One of you asked who I was making this sacrifice for, and I'll be honest, that one sat with me for a while. Here's the only answer I have. I wanted to be a cop since I was a kid. Somebody calls, you show up, you handle it. I was good at it before I ever got to this town, and I'm good at it now. The calls here don't make sense. Fine, they're still calls. Somebody still has to show up. That's the whole answer. If you were hoping for something deeper, I don't have it. At least, that's what I would have told you that night, sitting in the parking lot with the engine running. I know a little more now. I'll get to it. I turned right. The drive to the building took 11 minutes. I knew that because I'd made it 5 times before. Every time the priest was already there when I pulled up, already parked, already standing by the front door like he'd been waiting all day and didn't mind. I never once saw him arrive. I never thought about that until that night. This time, there was nobody standing at the door. I wish I had a plan. I didn't. I had a transfer form on the passenger seat that I'd read 4 times. A radio that had played my own voice back to me an hour earlier. And 11 minutes to think about the fact that the man who ran this ceremony 5 times in front of me was gone. And nobody had taught me a single word of it. The transfer form was real, by the way. I checked everything. A real letterhead and a signature from a captain I actually served under, dated that night. The town doesn't bluff. That's something I understand about it now. When it offers you a door, the door works. I left the form on the seat and got out of the car. The front door of the building was unlocked. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor the way the priest always took them, slow, one hand on the rail. The building was quiet. The hallway on the 3rd floor looked the same as every time before. Doors on both sides, all of them shut, and the last door at the end of the hall, 3C. I heard it before I got there. Voices, a lot of them, overlapping, layered, like a crowded room with a TV on. I stopped where the priest always stopped, a few feet back from the door, and the voices stopped too, all at once, like somebody lifted a needle off a record. I stood there. I didn't know the words. I didn't have holy water. I had a flashlight and a gun and 12 years of showing up to things, and none of that had ever opened or closed anything in this town. So I said the only thing I could think of. It's time. You know why I'm here. The door stayed quiet for a long moment. Then a voice came through it, a child's voice, small and wet, like the kid had been crying for hours. "You're not him." "No," I said. "I'm not." "He's not coming back. Nobody taught you the words. Nobody taught you anything. They sent you here the same way they sent you everywhere. Alone and late." I didn't answer that, mostly because it was true. The voice changed. "Chris?" It was Ian. It was his voice. Perfect. "Chris, it's me. I don't know where this is. It's dark, and there's a door, and I can hear your voice. Everything it takes ends up behind this door. The ceremony is the only time it opens. Please, the priest knew. He knew, and he left us here anyway." My hand was on the doorknob. 1 second, I was standing where the priest always stood, and the next, I was holding the knob, and it was cold, and Ian's voice was right against the other side of the wood, close enough that I heard him breathing between the words. And then it stopped being Ian. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to save them. I tried." My voice. The same thing it played through the sergeant's radio. The same thing it said through this same door the first time the priest brought me here, while I stood in the hallway feeling my skin crawl, word for word. And standing there with my hand on the knob, I finally understood what it was. It was never a prophecy. It was a lure. It cut those words out of me the first time it ever heard my voice, and it kept them. It almost worked. What stopped me was a hand on my shoulder. "Take your hand off the door, kid." Steve. I hadn't heard him come up the stairs. He stood in that hallway, looking at the door the way you look at a dog you've known a long time. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. "Neither are you. Yet." He nodded at the door. "It do Ian for you?" I told him it did. Figured. It did kids' voices for me. My first time. Doesn't bother anymore. It knows I'm empty on that account. He stepped past me, right up to the door, closer than I ever saw the priest get. "It's got nothing left I want. That's the qualification, if you're wondering. That's the whole job posting." "Steve, what happens without the priest?" He was quiet for a second. "Somebody holds the door," he said, "from the inside." I started to say something when he talked over me, which he'd been doing since my first night. And I let him, which I'd been doing just as long. 31 years, Chris. I've watched this town take pieces of better men than me, on a schedule. I stayed because somebody had to teach you idiots which calls to drive slow to. Well, you drive slow now. You listen to dispatch. You made it further than anybody I've broken in, and I've broken in 11. He put his hand flat on the door, casual, like he was checking it for heat. "I'm due. Been due. The town's been polite about it, and I've been ignoring it. And tonight, the bill came in your name instead of mine. That's not happening." "Steve?" "First one's the worst," he said. "This is my last one. Trade you." I said his name again. I didn't have anything to put after it. He opened the door. "I'm going to describe what I saw because I've owed you people the truth this whole time, and I'm done being careful with it. I'd tell it the way I'd give a statement. The room was a bedroom. Bare floor, one window boarded from the inside, no furniture. The room was full of people, maybe 30 of them, packed shoulder to shoulder the way people stand at a wake. An old woman by the window, a man in work clothes, kids, all of them facing the door, and all of them with their mouths open, and none of the mouths matched the breathing. The breathing came from the room itself. One breath, one set of lungs somewhere under the floor of all those open mouths. and every person in that crowd swayed with it, together, like weeds in the same current. None of them had eyes, just skin, smooth, like eyes were never part of the plan. Like whoever built these people worked from a description given over the phone. The old woman by the window was wearing my mother's cardigan. The man in work clothes had Ian's haircut. I understood then that I wasn't looking at the people it took. I was looking at its wardrobe. Steve walked in like a man walking into a break room. Every open mouth in that crowd turned to follow him, and the room said his name in 30 voices at once, and he said, clear as anything, "All right, I'm here. Shut up." The door closed on its own. Every voice in that building stopped at once, and this time, they stayed stopped. I stood in that hallway for a long time. Then I said the only thing I had. I said, "Thank you, and I'm sorry I never bought you a coffee. Not once, all this time, and I never bought you a single coffee." And through the door, I heard him laugh. I drove back to the precinct. The transfer form was gone off the passenger seat. I never touched it. I checked the whole car with my flashlight like it was evidence, and it was just gone. And I understood the offer had expired and was never going to be made again. I felt something I had no business feeling about that. Relief. Now, the thing I said I'd get to. Remember my first post? The very first thing I told you? 12 years on the job, 3 of them in this town. I wrote that sentence, and it didn't even slow me down. Here's what I didn't tell you, because I didn't know it. Everything I've written about in these posts, the first night, the accident on the road, the ceremony, Ian, all of it happened in my first year here. I've been here 3. After that night, I did the math. Pay stubs and a calendar. There are 2 years I can't account for. Whole seasons I remember as weeks. I'm not going to try to explain it, because I can't. And because I think some of you already suspected, reading between the lines, and were kind enough not to say anything. The town doesn't keep you here. The road out is real, and the transfer was real. It just makes staying feel like your idea, and it makes time cost less than it should. And by the time you finally count your pay stubs, you're not a transfer anymore. You're part of it. 2 more things, and then I'm done. Not long ago, the radio went off.
Unit 1, come up on the air.
Go for Unit 1.
Got a job for you. Head over about 2 blocks. You'll see a blue house with its porch light on. A man will be waiting outside for you. He called 911 stating his wife isn't feeling well.
Word for word, 3 years apart, and dispatch read me my first call like it was fresh off the printer. I drove there at the speed dispatch gave me. The porch light was on. The man was waiting outside, same as before, and he thanked me for my timely response. And he called me officers, plural. His wife wanted to play hide and seek. She always does. The first time, that house had me sprinting from my car. This time, I stood in that hot bedroom and told her to pick a good spot. And I counted. And EMS showed up and did their thing. And on my way out, the husband told me she likes me. I said goodnight to them both, and I'm not embarrassed about that. And this morning, before shift, I passed the locker room. There were voices in there laughing, the same one as always. The ones that were real ones. One of the laughs was real. I stood outside that door for a minute. I didn't go in. It wasn't time for me to go in. I've gotten good at knowing what time it is in this town. Then I stopped by the sergeant's office. It's still his. I don't think that door will ever belong to anybody else, and I'm fine with that. But a while back, Ian showed me where the pen is kept, and he didn't say anything when he did it, and I understood. There's a new officer transferring in soon, voluntold, I'd guess, young, good record, the kind of cop who shows up. I wrote the note and taped it to the door, where the notes have always been, and I put the spare keys in the visor of the patrol car out back. The note says, "Welcome aboard. Coffee's in the back. It's terrible. Drink it anyway. Listen to dispatch. Drive the speed they give you. The calls won't make sense. Show up to them anyway. That's the whole job. You're going to have questions. Bring them to the locker room. Somebody in there will always answer."
When I was 11, my mother bought me a telescope from a novelty store. It was old, about 10 or so years maybe, slightly rusted from time, but never used. The next night, I went out to a small field and used it to gaze into the sky. The moment the reflected lights of the planets shined into my eyes was the moment I knew what I wanted to do. Our twin sister, Venus, so alike and yet more different than we could have ever imagined. Jupiter, the titanic guardian of the inner planets, morphing the system around it. Saturn, with her beautiful and luscious rings that envelop her sky. Mercury, a small and rapid rock that was closer to the light than anyone on Earth could withstand. And most of all, Mars, the red planet, a fearsome, war-born neighbor, and what would be the next step on humanity's path to the stars. I knew with just one look that I wanted to help guide us on that path. I've been working at NASA for over 15 years now, and in that time, I've seen dozens of proposals for a manned landing on Mars. Hundreds of people spent weeks at a time discussing the engineering process behind designing a craft capable of carrying out the task of transporting mankind back and forth between the two planets. Millions of dollars poured into projects that never came to light. And for the longest time, the problem was that we simply couldn't feasibly land someone on the planet and then help them return home safely. In part, that was one of the reasons we launched the Mars exploration rovers. If you don't know, I'll go over it briefly. The MER was a mission that involved launching 2 rovers to explore the surface of Mars. And the 2 were named Spirit and Opportunity. They would be the successor to the prior Sojourner rover. The data collected thanks to the MER is invaluable, and at any other time, I would love to divulge them. They were only planned to last 90 days, but the guys back in engineering seriously put in some effort. They lasted longer than they should have after arriving in early 2004. For most of the mission, it wasn't too special. We gathered as much data as we could, had the rovers explore their surroundings, mine up rocks sometimes. Nothing too special to write home about, unless you're really interested in Martian minerals. Officially, Spirit's mission ended after getting struck in a sandpit in 2009, losing all power the year later, and the mission declared completed after another year. This is partially true. Spirit really did lose her power after she got stuck. It's partially our fault. She had fallen into a slight dip in the ground, and the risk of falling deeper was huge. We assumed it was a sandpit and acted like we always had, but alas, it wasn't. Upon instructing her to escape, Spirit lost her footing, falling into a deep hole. Her signal strength was heavily weakened by her fall, and the sands of Mars were destined to bury the rover alive. I spent most of the time with Spirit after she fell in. It's strange, yes, but I felt an attachment to the rovers. Seeing her trapped in the dunes of Mars was like watching my daughter trip into a well. Still, she remained operational for nearly 2 months, even if the data she was sending quickly became the same tedious graphics and images that were hampered by time. Most of our crew shifted focus to opportunity, but I stayed behind with Spirit. The closer she got to the end of her lifespan, the longer we had to wait. Someone suggested brightening it. It was still near total darkness, but in the corner, there were 2 very distinct red dots aimed directly at the camera. We couldn't shake how much they looked like eyes. Apart from that, the cavern was slightly visible, appearing to be a vastly different location than we had last seen. Spirit must have moved significantly, but where to, and more importantly how, is something I'm still not entirely sure of. Most of the attention was drawn to the red, glowing dots. This wasn't necessarily proof of anything. There are several possible answers for what they could be. The camera might have detected large pieces of dust, and due to the quality loss of brightening, it appeared much rounder than it really was. It could be a reflection of the rover's lights on the cave wall. That's the answer we settled on. But I knew something was off. I think my colleagues did too. This was the last we've received from Spirit. We stopped trying to communicate with her. We had more important things to put our focus on, namely the remaining rover, Opportunity and Curiosity, who was to be launched in November. I've always considered Opportunity and Spirit to be twins, brother and sister with the shared purpose of propelling humanity into the future, taking after their eldest brother, Sojourner. I was still studying when Sojourner was active, but I can try and dig around for information on him sometime later. But I'm getting off track. Opportunity is much the star of the MER. He lasted for over 15 years on the harsh Martian landscape, powering through dust, rock, and time with the passionate hearts of 7 billion people behind him. Oppie, as he came to be called, was, for a few months, the only active rover until Curiosity's arrival in 2012. Although not as focused on the subject of life as his younger sibling, he still provided invaluable information. I've never been more proud of a little rover in my life than I was of this little guy. Without his twin, Oppie had to function alone, even if only for a short period. Still, I didn't want him to feel alone without Spirit. I'd dedicate her memory to him. Oppie's mission officially came to a halt 2 years ago. A severe dust storm had sent him into hibernation, a sleep from which he would never awake. Last February, we stopped trying to awaken him and bid farewell to Opportunity. That's the official story, and unlike Spirit, it's much further than the truth, and there's a damn good reason for keeping it secret. Although he was supposed to be in hibernation during the storm, Oppie would occasionally send back information about odd, seemingly volcanic rocks. This was obviously startling, and not just because the rover was somehow operating during hibernation. Where he was stationed, Oppie wasn't in range of any volcanic fixtures. The only way he could be sending this data was if he somehow reactivated during the storm, and if a group of volcanic rocks just so happened to have been pushed by the winds close enough for him to reach. Needless to say, the chances of that occurring are slim to none. Knowing the media panic that ensued from the implication, all of this was quickly classified. Opportunity would officially be declared as inoperative and would remain that way until further notice. Unofficially, research continued. The same team that worked with Spirit after she fell into that cave was assembled to investigate this mystery, myself included. Oppie would still carry out the tasks instructed of him, and as such, an image was requested. In response, he sent back an almost natural photo of the Martian landscape. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for the rocks. Lying on the ground next to his wheels were 6 perfectly cut hexagonal prisms made out of what looked to be obsidian. Lowering the camera and taking another photo, markings were discovered on the objects. Unnervingly, they were all facing the screen and perfectly aligned at that. The markings on the objects were strange, to say the least. They resembled hieroglyphics in a way, yet they remained distinctly different. What felt especially eerie was that they resembled the sigils Spirit had found years prior. Scanning them gave us the exact same data Oppie was sending us during the storm. Normally, in a scientific situation, we try to take things logically. The reason we don't accept aliens did it as a solution to every mystery we encounter in space is that, in science, our goal is to find a natural explanation behind all observed phenomena. And in all situations we find ourselves in, there is one. Our goal is to find it. There was nothing explainable nor natural about this. Still, assuming we had just discovered alien life, they should have left traces of something when interacting with objects that would have been picked up by Oppie during his scans. If Opportunity was the one who placed the objects, that also doesn't make sense. The rocks weren't there before the storm, and the wheels are much too slow for Oppie to have somehow found him and returned him to his location. Besides that, why would he behave in this way? He had to be instructed to do this by something we were somehow unable to detect, something that came during the storm. After a short debate, we instructed Oppie to pick up each prism and photograph it individually in hopes of possibly understanding what they were supposed to be. Multiple theories started up in the control room, quickly diverting attention. Assuming it was genuinely alien life, it is way too deliberate to have been an accident. Whatever alien life did this would be at least moderately intelligent. Maybe it was trying to greet us. But if that's the case, why like this? If it's aware we're watching, then why doesn't it show itself? The debates continued as opportunity sent back photographs. Taking a break from the conversation, I briefly looked at the screen and immediately froze. The most recent image was of the second prism. Almost nothing unusual about that. But in the very far distance of the screen stood something. It was almost impossible to see behind all of the dust. I couldn't make out much of anything regarding the figure's appearance. I chalked it up to maybe being one of the other prisms, and the angle had made it appear further away. The third image disproved that. The figure was visibly closer this time, but still difficult to make out. From where it was shot, it was obvious whatever I was looking at was humanoid. It was rather short, about the size of a teenager. I took a moment, then waited for the fourth image. When it arrived, I nearly took a step back. At that point, it was clear that whatever this was, it had to be some sort of a creature, and it was making its way toward Oppie. They were much easier to see, judging by the sudden halt in chatter around me. They were hunched over, standing on jagged and clawed feet. A glimmer of red could be seen glaring at the camera. The same crimson shade captured by Spirit in her last photograph. Equally red teeth could be seen in the beast's maddened grin, lined around a long snout. It had several large protrusions emerging from the back of its head, almost like tentacles in the form of hair. Hanging above its head were two very long tails, seemingly longer than the creature was tall, sharp thorns covering them like razor wire. I wasn't afraid of its appearance. I was afraid that whatever this thing was, it was walking on the surface of Mars with apparently no issue. I was afraid of the malice in its eyes. I can't describe what it felt like. They pierced down into my soul, racking my heart with fear until it pounded uncontrollably, as if it was ready to burst from its cage. It didn't feel like it was looking at the rover, nor the camera. It felt like it was looking at us. It couldn't be. It couldn't know. Even if it was aware that the rover could see, it couldn't possibly know what Oppie's purpose is, and it certainly couldn't predict when the images are taken. The data transmission takes 6 minutes total, from when the order is sent to when it is received, and my heart stopped. The images were 3 minutes old. We were looking at the past. The creature was already at the rover. Before I could even react to the realization, The screen flickered to what should have shown the fifth prism. Instead, the camera was tilted over to face the creature, whose claws were wrapped around Oppie's body. Animosity filled its scornful gaze. The crimson red that outlined its eyes and teeth took on a new hue, the same as the red rocks of Mars. From the height of the photo, the creature must have been lifting Oppie. The sixth image was never received. Opportunity never responded to any of our communication attempts after it sent that picture. As far as anyone here knows, the creature destroyed the rover, leaving curiosity alone on the barren surface. Obviously, it was very quickly decided that none of this would become public. Internally, we were a mess afterwards. It was undeniable proof of alien life, which we had searched so long to find. And yet, while nobody could say why, it was more unnerving than exciting. We expected microbes, not an animal, let alone an intelligent one. That's what gets me the most. The way its eyes locked into mine. There's nothing I can say that could possibly describe the feeling of abject hatred in that beast's eyes. That wasn't instinct. It was malice. It hated humanity. And it hated Earth. And it wanted us to know that. Despite how horrifying the ordeal felt, I kept my composure as best as I could and assisted in the cover-up. I don't think I abandoned my morals, nor do I think that NASA did the wrong thing by hiding this. Hell, even now, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by telling you all. The discovery of life on another planet should be one of excitement, not dread. That's what I wanted people to feel when we made the announcement. And so, the true fate of opportunity remained in the shadows. I know a few people who try to go public about it, posting online, telling friends and family. Nobody believed them, and NASA knew that. No, they're not dead in a ditch somewhere. There's not a lot of people with the education and expertise necessitated for our means. And besides, it'd be more suspicious if they did end up in a ditch. They did get one hell of a pay cut though, that's for sure. So why am I finally telling you all about this? Sure, there's no risk to my life. And hey, they can cut my pay in half, and I'll still be making more than the average family. But I supported them, helped them cover this, and I even sympathize with their reasoning. Well, it's because of what I saw last week. Due to the quarantine, I've been spending all of my time here at base, monitoring Curiosity's search. Everything was going well, nothing out of the ordinary, until that Saturday. It was almost midnight when I noticed it. There it was, in the most recent photograph. Just sitting there, tauntingly, 6 hexagonal prisms, each turned towards Curiosity. The creature I had seen, that we had all seen and chose to deny. It sat atop a large rock, glaring into the camera with a tilted head. Its eyes and muzzle burrowed into a mocking expression. I could almost hear it sneer. Most everyone else was asleep or had left, so the decisions came down to me. I just stood there, dumbfounded. This couldn't be the same creature. It just couldn't be. Curiosity is thousands of kilometers from opportunity. How could it have traveled that distance on foot? I knew by all logic it had to be a different member of the same species. But something in its eyes, the purely crimson dots, it told a different story. They were the same. I saw them through Spirit's eyes. I saw them through Oppie's. hesitating and shaking, I sent a photo request and waited for the 6 long minutes for a response. I was greeted by the sight of the creature, grinning maniacally. It was gesturing to the ground beneath its feet. Standing there were the prisms, the clearest shot of all 6 at once, the sigils inscribed on their faces as visible as the hatred in the beast's soul. I've still yet to decode what they mean. I requested one more image on the off chance that curiosity was spared destruction. What I saw is why I've finally broken my vow of secrecy. It's why I'm telling you all this. Hell, it's why I might spill everything I can find. Knowing this thing existed on the Red Planet, how intelligent it was, and how scornful of man it seemed to be. That alone horrified me to want to forget the beast. It had crawled from the depths of insanity, the core of the planet of war itself. One single soldier, capable of tearing through the strongest alloys we could construct. Just one. And in the last photo, there were thousands. If only I knew what kind of fucked up rabbit hole I was crawling into when I first saw those things on Mars. Well, when you enter this kind of work, you acknowledge that you're not getting out of it. You don't just leave the world of astronomy after discovering all its wonders. No, when you enter that world, you become part of it. A piece of an ever-growing puzzle. Astronomy is a science that becomes your kin. I've seen things I wish I hadn't. But I can't quit my quest to understand, to discover all that the universe has to offer. When I became an astronomer, when I accepted this position 17 years ago, I understood that it was something I would hold to for the rest of my life. Now that it's led me to what it has, there really is no turning back. Right from the get-go, what I thought was the discovery of extraterrestrial life on another planet was merely another encounter with it. The earliest I can trace the first sighting of the creatures dates back to 1971. Unfortunately, there was in a landing by the Soviets, and trying to sift through their files has led me nowhere so far. I'm left in the dark when it comes to that. Apart from the knowledge that the Soviets were aware of life on Mars decades before Spirit and Opportunity made history. How they did, I'll get into that. But for now, I will keep trying to uncover what I can. Unfortunately, the collapse of the Soviet Union makes this monumentally more difficult. Now, on to what we at NASA have found. Despite what I thought, Sojourner had no encounters with the Martians. Rather, our first meeting was with the Mars Surveyor program in 1998. NASA launched 2 spacecraft that year, an orbiter and a lander. The official story is that the Mars Polar Lander lost contact upon descent, and the Mars Climate Orbiter crashed into the planet due to an error in which the craft utilized imperial seconds. As you can expect by now, this is far from the truth. Lander continued communications for at least 17 hours, and although most records are scrubbed, I found a mostly uncensored report. I'm not sure who recorded it. I've never seen them before, but it contains the bulk of information on Lander. Here's the transcript. This is going on record. The Mars Surveyor program has encountered unexpected interference. Touchdown occurred at roughly 2012 UTC on December 3rd. The lander failed to establish communications for 34 minutes before successful interactions occurred. Imager showed the location to be vastly different than anticipated. Lander made contact with a deep thin crater that led into a cavern. Probes failed to respond. No data was collected via Lander. Object instead lifted by unseen force. Lander ceases communication for the next 23 minutes. Upon return, an image of a shrine was sent. Shrine appeared ritualistic in nature and was carved out of an unknown material, likely obsidian. The video pauses then to show the photo. The molded material and the sigils inscribed into it reminded me all too well. A thick layer of some strange viscous yellow liquid was smeared on the shrine. I couldn't see any Martians in the frame, but I knew they were there. Second photo shows an unidentified figure, standing at approximately 312 centimeters tall, maintaining a slender frame. Analysis from the biological department has concluded that the figure is an animal of reptilian descent. There it is. There it fucking is. Staring right at the camera, grinning with sadistic glee. The next two frames are simply clearer shots of both the Martian and the shrine. Whatever kind of fucked up religion they had, they were dedicated to it. Pieces of metal, presumably from prior landers, were used as decoration. Another similar figure appears, measuring slightly shorter at 306 centimeters. The two figures kneel in front of the shrine. Communication ceases for 49 minutes. When it resumes, Lander has been moved back, giving it a clear view. Yet another figure is standing at the altar with a lowered head. Figure turns to face the camera. This one was odd. Markings were present along the creature's scales. For what purpose, we'll get into later. The next few frames are simply more shots of this specific individual. Strangely, there's no malice in this one. Merely a solemn gaze into the lens. It's the first Martian that didn't give me a death glare. Four other figures enter the frame. The middle figure, hereby designated as the tribute, gets on top of the altar and lays down on its back. The four others each take one limb from the tribute and hold it in place before restraining the tribute to the shrine. Tribute shows no signs of hesitation. This frame appears to show them communicating with the others. The four figures exit the scene, leaving Tribute alone. 9 minutes pass before a figure enters the frame and stares at the camera. I won't lie, I almost stopped there. Those eyes, I know them. Spirit knows them. Oppie knows them. It was as if this fucking thing was following me. But this was the past, long before Spirit made contact. My heart started racing faster after seeing it, but I pressed on. The voiceover ends, leaving just the photos streaming like video. Tribute seemed agitated, almost distressed even. As the larger creature stepped back, gaze fixated on the camera. With its two hands, it places them onto Tribute's body, tracing the markings with its claws. With a sickening grin, its claws pierce down into Tribute's scales, tearing apart their flesh. There's no audio attached, but Tribute's expression changed from one of fear and desperation to one of agony. I won't go into detail here for the sake of your sanity, but Tribute was swiftly eviscerated with ruthless efficiency, splattering the shrine with yellow blood. They remained alive for a long while, but eventually succumbed to their wounds. The cuts were drawn along the symbols of their body. When the deed was done, the monster rose from the shrine, eyes having never left the cameras. Then, with one quick strike, it tore Lander apart, ending the signal. The rest of the report talks about the implications and the definite cover-up that would need to happen. My first time watching, I was speechless. If these things were willing to slaughter their own so savagely, that doesn't bode well for future interactions. After that, I didn't know where to look. The Soviets knew something. They did something, but Lander's fate gave no insight into what exactly they did. I had to look elsewhere, and my search eventually led to something entirely new. A completely off-the-records mission. One that was never revealed to the public, let alone what she had found. It was a rover crafted to follow up on Lander's findings, and this lone adventurer went unnamed. I've decided to name her Journey. It just felt wrong for any rover to go as just a statistic. Journey was secretly launched on January 29th, 2000. Her destination was the same as Lander's. Her cameras were much more equipped. They were capable of sending an actual live feed, rather than static images. She made touchdown in mid-February, quickly moving to where Lander had fallen. There's no report on this one, only video files and pictures. For the first 3 days, she just travels, finally finding the shrine late the third night. The blood was dried out by now, scarcely any evidence of the slaughter before. Journey continued to explore the shrine, finding smaller altars and very familiar obsidian rocks. For a large chunk of the footage, no life is seen. Eventually, Journey makes her way down a small and cramped corridor before reaching an expansive open room. Hanging from the rocky ceilings sat dozens of bioluminescent flora, each glowing shades of blue, some dimmer than others. The soil beneath was coated with a dim red grass. Journey paused for a moment, as if she was taking in the view. Small vines stuck out from the grass with bulbous fruit attached. Carefully, she crept towards one, reaching out and taking a fruit to examine. It had an almost ocean blue color and was shaped like a cross between a pear and a banana. Journey didn't have the dexterity to peel back the skin, not without damaging the fruit, I assume. So she gently placed it onto the ground. Following another passageway, she entered a slightly smaller room that shared many traits with the prior. Instead of the pear-like fruit, this room seemed reserved for the cultivation of a large watermelon-like fruit, differed only by its mango mixture of colors. This room was a dead end, so Journey turned around, back the way she came. The next few rooms are all of the same caliber, a room containing a single type of fruit. It wasn't until Journey encountered a massive underground ravine that things changed. The small opening gave way to an expansive chasm, walls adorned with balconies and doorways all the way to the top. It was undeniable, an underground Martian village. Journey stood for a moment, gawking at the sight as I assume her handlers were too, simply moving the camera to view all she could. Journey's field of view caught several lingering creatures, the brightest and clearest view I've ever had of them. One particular Martian was at work with the pieces of Lander, trying to mend it with another unidentified spacecraft. My eyes lit up as Journey slowly approached, giving a clearer view of the heavily faded flag of the USSR. The Soviets had definitely been here before, but as expected, their craft fell victim to the hostile life. Despite the danger presented, Journey pushed forward until you could see the glimmer of the Martian's eyes. Like tribute, this one, I'll call him Mechanic, was contrary to the typical malicious glare of his kin. Rather, it was one of childlike curiosity, poking and pulling at the metal. When Mechanic finally noticed Journey, they simply sat as the rover approached, arm extended. Mechanic pressed both of their tails against the rover in what I assume is a greeting, before turning their attention back. Fascinatingly enough, most of the Martians that interacted with Journey did so positively. It's surreal seeing them act so jovial to something they gleefully destroyed. Venturing further into the village, the rover found a small icy blue pond. A quick analysis confirmed it was water. Incredibly pure water at that. Lush red grass encircled the pond. Mechanic approached from behind, quickly getting onto their stomach to stare at Journey. Their eyes locked, as much as one can while staring at a camera. The wonder in their eyes reminds me of myself, years prior. The excitement, the drive to want to know more. It almost made me forget what I had seen them do. It probably would have, if not for what happened next. Mechanic's attention was drawn away suddenly, by a loud sound perhaps, and Journey followed suit 6 minutes later. By then, most of the Martians had left. Only a few stragglers sticking around and even fewer going down the white path. Journey gave chase, slowly but surely. The path led her to a large room reminiscent of the shrine, except perhaps more refined and focused. Hundreds of the Martians were gathered around, staring at the altar where those oh so familiar eyes were situated. Through the crowd, I could aside. 3 figures walked towards the altar, each lending their strength to carry a body of their own. Reaching the end of the hall, they were sprawled out, and my horror rose tenfold. They weren't bodies. They were people. Living, breathing people. Men on Mars. And they were terrified. The 2 males were chained to the altar while the blonde woman was dragged to Journey where she was hidden off camera. I screamed at the rover to move, to help, to do something other than stand and watch. But her operators gave her no aid to assist. Journey was as powerless as these men. The crowd seemed to go insane, beyond ecstatic at the prospect of a ritualistic slaughter. The man on the right, with brown hair, stared defiantly at Leader, bravely facing his death with dignity. The quality of the camera was good enough to even let me see him spit at his killer mockingly. Judging purely by appearance, he was Russian. The Soviets had been to Mars. They even landed on it. I can see why they didn't say. The Russians' taunting was short-lived. Leader jabbed its claws into his abdomen with what must have produced a sickening crack. I grimaced at the sight, but pressed on. The man never screamed, as far as I could tell. He seemed to be laughing in the face of death. I so wish there was audio to know what he had been saying, even as Leader furiously tore into his chest. The man stayed steadfast until he could laugh no more. A corpse on the slab. The man beside him seemed much younger and significantly less composed. Terror was visible on his face as Leader prepared to deliver him onto the same fate. His eyes made contact with Journey, her lenses echoing the apathetic stance of her operators. The second man had no time to beg. Leader cracked open his chest like a newborn xenomorph would hatch from its host. The man thrashed, kicked, screamed, cried. It made no difference. Leader didn't care, and neither did the operators. Journey sat there, forced to watch along with the woman. The man's torment didn't last long. Mercifully, he died quick. Leader stepped back, hunching over with its head pointed up. It unhinged its jaws in what I can only imagine was an unholy roar of sadistic pride. The crowd was pleased, to say the least. Leader went on to drag out the woman, who had tears in her eyes, forcing her to stare at the camera. She shook her head, reluctant of something. But her resistance was put to an end with Leader's razor-bladed tail slicing across her back. She fell over, blood pouring out her back before picking herself up, emotion draining from her face. She says something, her body trembling, before the feed finally cuts out. Journey's end. The first time I saw that, I was distressed. I was scared. I was enraged. I didn't even try to think about what she had said. The next day, I watched it again, preparing to transcribe it. It was only then my interest took note. Leader wanted her to say something. It was most definitely in Russian, a language I'm not fluent in, let alone reading lips to understand. I've given it my best shot, and, well, there's no question about it. I have to find out what the Soviets found. I have to find out what they did. I'm too deep into this now, and hell, I probably know enough to where I might actually be in real danger now, especially with all I'm revealing. But the world needs to know. You have to know what she said. This is all our fault. My grandfather passed away in 2007. He was 70 years old exactly. He was old enough to have seen the moon landing live, all the way back in 1969. Most everyone who saw the footage was enamored by the prospect that we as a species has made it to Luna, to a place our ancestors thought was too far from our reach. Even now, it fills people with a sense of wonder and awe for the solution of the impossible. My grandfather was the only man I knew who felt otherwise. A gut feeling told him that something terrible is out there in the stars, and that by landing on the moon, we open the door to madness. After everything that's happened so far, I'm inclined to believe him. The insanity, of course, wasn't on the moon, but rather our dearest neighbor Mars, the Roman god of war. At times, I think how fitting that name has become over time. I've dug in as far as I can for answers. Just the opportunity to know a little bit more is all I seeked, and I found what I was looking for. Dear Lord, do I regret it, however. Before I get into that, let me catch you up on some things as well as answer a few questions and comments I've received. A month ago, one of our rovers, Curiosity, encountered alien life on Mars. She is the third to do so that I knew of after Spirit and Opportunity, all of which I was here to witness for myself. Just recently, I've discovered that the Soviets have not only landed spacecraft on Mars, but succeeded in doing what NASA has not, putting man on Mars. Now, let me address some comments. I've seen a few people suggesting we glass or nuke the planet, and I don't need to explain why that won't work. We can barely send rovers to Mars, let alone nuclear weapons. Furthermore, these creatures have adapted to survive on the surface, so I doubt the resulting radiation would have much effect if the sun does nothing. We'd need a much more powerful weapon than what we have access to now. Some people have also mentioned that perhaps we are the intruders, and I don't know what to say to that. Hell, we might be to some, but they appear to have a vendetta against us specifically. Next, someone mentioned they might be building a rocket. I'm inclined to agree after what I've seen now. I can only hope they fail. I'll explain that later. Now, with that out of the way, let me tell you what I found. Much to my dismay, the Soviets did a damn good job at covering up their landings. So much so that almost all of the records are lost or destroyed. Almost all of them. A scarce few remain, and with a bit of digging and bribery, I've gotten a look at them. Most of it is heavily redacted, apart from the centerpiece, what I was definitely happy to find. The live feed recording of the Soviets' Martian landing from 1989, audio and all. I can't upload the video, as it will almost definitely attract attention. That's why I haven't uploaded anything beyond my posts. But I certainly can transcribe this for you. The feed starts from the cone of the landing craft as it descends onto the Martian landscape. For a few minutes, nothing of note happens, until the door unseals and slowly opens. Out steps a man who cuts the feed, swapping it to show video and audio from his helmet, exclaiming in Russian. I don't know what exactly he said. He faces the other impressively large pot, from which the female, Stella Zolina, if records are correct, from Journey's footage exits. She is visibly much younger, 10 years younger in fact. My stomach churns, thinking about how long she had been held captive there. The two begin a short exchange.
Touchdown?
She asks.
Yes, we did it. Can you hear us, Commander? We're on the surface.
The man replies with beaming enthusiasm. The woman steps aside to give room for the rest of the crew to come out. It's a rather large crew of 7 people. 2 men who I recognized from Journey's footage are among them. Thanks to documents, I know that their names are Maxim Durov and Yakov Selner. The 6th crew member gathered in a line as the camera operator showed them off one by one, admiring the dedication and heroism of his crew.
Yakov, you seeing this? I can't believe it.
One cosmonaut, Sergei Chernov, says. Yakov, the crying man from the previous video, steps out of formation and looks around in awe. He is joined by 2 others.
We're heroes, the pride and joy of millions. How could I believe it?
Yakov answers. The 2nd woman, Documents namer Natia Letova, re-enters the capsule along with Maxim and a man named by Documents as Luchak Turbin. That leaves Damian Poltonov as the cameraman. The footage is mostly uneventful for the first 30 minutes or so. Mostly the crew discussing their excitement and pride for the successful landing while they set up equipment and gather samples. Yakov takes a Soviet flag from the craft and ventures with Sergei to find a place to plant it.
Careful and be back in 10, no less.
Damian orders. Yakov chuckles and keeps walking. I can almost feel Damian roll his eyes. He steps in the pot, and the next 10 minutes are simply just waiting. Of course, neither Yakov nor Sergei returned.
Yakov, what's the holdup?
Luchak asks impatiently. No response.
Yakov? Sergei?
Nothing but silence.
Come in, Yakov. This is Sergei. Can you read me?
Sergei's voice is dumbstruck, contrasting how tough it sounds otherwise.
We found a structure.
Luchok turns to look at Damien in confusion. Natya has no answers either, if she even noticed.
Explain, Sergey. It's a cavern. Deep. Can't see far into it. Yakov wouldn't listen and went down. Lost comms. Tried to follow, but it's too dark.
There is a hint of panic in Sergey's voice. I could tell what cavern he found. I knew exactly what he was referring to. The shrine.
Fucking idiot, Yakov. How did he even pass? Sergey, stay where you are. Maxim, Stella, bring him a lamp. Go find that idiot. Damien, Natya, stay with me.
I could agree with Luchok's anger. Even though he couldn't have shown, Yakov was clearly not the brightest. Maxim and Stella pack up a few supplies before heading out. Damien gives the camera to Stella and the two head out. The trek to Sergey felt ever familiar. The unmarked ground being filled with footsteps that would be joined by a rover's slow riding across the ground. When Sergey came into view, he waved to Maxim as the cavern was visible behind him. It confirmed my fears. It was definitely the same cavern Lander and Journey had encountered.
Hey, we got the lamp. Have you heard from Yakov?
Maxim asked, setting down the lamp and looking into the hole in the surface.
Nothing, man. Not even static. That idiot's probably lost by now. I told him not to go in. At least I kept the flag.
Sergey gestured to the Soviet flag, whose pole was firmly planted into the ground. A sense of national pride filled his eyes.
I'll stay here. Don't get lost now, and keep in touch with me or Luchok.
Maxim moved to the flag, standing tall next to it as it flapped in the wind.
Stella's with me then? Nice.
Sergey chuckled and glanced at Stella, who scoffed.
In your dream, Sergey.
Stella shut him down.
Luchok, we're at the crevice. Trench is about 3 meters in diameter. Maxim will stay up here, while Sergey and I look for Yakov. That good, Commander? Permission granted. Go ahead, you two. Don't get lost.
Luchok replied. With that, Sergey and Stella made their way into the cavern. Maxim held the light, leading the way while Stella followed behind him. Occasionally, she'd look down and pick up a rock or some dirt. It wasn't until she encountered a 6-sided obsidian prism that she spoke again.
Come look at this.
Sergey turned around and walked over to her, glancing down at the rock as she held it in her palm.
What the hell is that? Don't know, Maxim. Luchok, can you hear us?
Stella called in, but there was no reply. Judging by the terrain, they were almost at the shrine.
Damn, no signal. Too far down. Heard from Yakov yet? No, I haven't heard anything from him. Let's...
Sergey was interrupted by an ear-piercing shriek. When I first watched it, I fell back from my chair in shock. It was an incredibly loud, inhumane scream that was tinged with pain and fear. Sergey and Stella rushed down the halls to the source when Yakov's voice finally came in. He was screaming incoherently, violently swearing and gasping for breath before the two reached him at the shrine. Dead on the floor with yellow blood was a smaller Martian, whose head was bashed in with a rock held by Yakov.
What the fuck?
Sergey didn't even have time to ask questions before 3 more poked their heads into the chamber, rage visible in their eyes from the sight of one of their dead. The next few minutes were a blur. Stella made a break back the way she came, while Sergey stayed to try and defend Yakov. But as the tapes from the future showed, their fight wouldn't matter. Frantic panting started to fill the audio, drowning out the sounds of screams and fighting from the shrine. Miraculously, Stella got close enough to regain communication with Maxim, who picked up on her horrified gasping.
What the hell is going on down there? We lost you 6 minutes ago. What? Get back to the fucking shuttle, Maxim!
Stella demanded.
Calm down, Stella. I can't. There's something down here. Now fucking move, Maxim! Something? You mean, yes, Maxim, now hurry, they're right behind me.
Stella looked back to see two Martians running across the cavern's floor on all fours, chasing her with a maddening bloodlust. A light at the end of the tunnel gave way to the surface where Stella nearly collapsed into Maxim's arms. Their reunion was short-lived thanks to the creatures behind, which grabbed onto Stella and began dragging her back into the cave. She screamed in horror, kicking and fighting all she could, but the monsters had the upper hand. They tore into her spacesuit, trying to reach the skin beneath. I'll give credit to the Soviets. These suits weren't cheap, and it showed. The creatures that I had seen tear metal into shreds couldn't make a dent in the suit. Maxim must have realized things were lost when even more emerged from the cave, as they started running back towards the shuttle while the Martians gave up on trying to get to Stella's body, simply opting to drag her back into the darkness as she screamed and begged for help. The feed cuts out then and there. I thought that was it, but when I went to stop the footage, I noticed how long it was. It was days long, and giving a cursory glance showed that most of it was black empty feed. That is, until the end of the 5th day, when the footage finally returns. Stella is sitting in some sort of prison chamber, holding the camera in her hands, pointing it towards her face. She is still wearing the tattered and dirty remains of her spacesuit as she wept softly. After a few seconds, she spoke.
This is Stella Zolina, age 27, part of the USSR's Martian Expanse program. I don't know if Command is receiving this. Likely not. The transmitter should still be online back at the shuttle. If the shuttle is intact, that is. I don't know if it is or not. I'm reporting one confirmed fatality. Nadia Letova. May she rest in peace as an honor to her country. Those things. They killed her, took her to some sort of table, strapped her down, and tore out her guts. Made us watch as their fucked up crowd cheered them on. Yakov is badly injured. They're letting us patch him up. I don't know why. I don't know why they're keeping us alive. There's air down here. It's impossible, and it shouldn't be the case, but there's breathable air down here. I saw a couple of plants and farms on my way in. I can hear them speak sometimes, at what I assume must be night. I can't tell down here, and it's hard. Their voices are a bit scratchy and range from mellow to violent. I think there's some now. Hold on.
Stella pauses, holding the camera close to the wall. I can vaguely make out the sounds of alien chatter. Their voices seemed wrong, somehow. I don't know how to put it, but it made me feel very uneasy. It's difficult to describe. The best way to put it is, it sounds like a mixture between some sort of reptilian croaking and an Asian dialect.
Sorry, I'm distracted now. I just want to go home, you know? Never thought I'd get accepted for this program. And when I first got on the ship, I thought this would be something amazing. And we did land here. We did. We've made it to Mars. I don't think the inhabitants are happy about it. I don't know if it's because Yakov killed one. He says it attacked him first. Another thing I've noticed is that every day they take one of their own down into that first room we found. And after a few minutes, they come back without them, coated in blood. Sergei says it's some sort of sacrificial ritual. They drag the last one kicking and screaming. I don't know why they're killing their own and not us. But
Stella is interrupted by off-camera shuffling, which prompts her to turn the camera towards the noise, showing Damien still in his spacesuit but awake. Beside him is Luchak, who is tending to Yakov.
You finally got that thing working? They need to send men up here and fucking trash the place. Shoot every single one of those fucking lizards. Those bastards deserve it, after what they did to...
Damien himself is interrupted when Luchuk interjects.
Don't be a fucking idiot, Damien. You think anyone's gonna help?
Luchuk scoffs, shaking his head. It reminds me of the date of this recording, 1989, 31 years ago. He was right. Nobody would save them. Hell, we knew about them since 1999, and we didn't even bother to help. We just covered it up and moved on. Damien grumbles and walks towards Stella, taking a seat right next to her. He offers to hold the camera wordlessly, and she obliges, handing it over to him.
They took Sergey and Maxim for something. I don't know what. They still haven't found the ship, as far as we know. When Sergey explained, we decided to abandon the ship, leading those things off course. God knows that if they found it, they're looking for it. I think they know that it can get them to Earth. Fuck, if they find it.
Damien's grim expression as he stared hopelessly into the camera spoke miles. The sudden recognition in his eyes gave way to sorrow. I remembered that we never saw that craft. Movement comes from outside the cell, and Damien aims the camera to watch with him. A group of Martians march towards it, pushing Sergey and Maxim along. Damien stops breathing for a moment, the view of the camera shaking intensely.
Luchuk, how long do the ship's transmitters function after touchdown?
Damien asks, his voice dead set on a suicidal idea that I already knew he'd go through with.
About a week or two tops. Why?
Luchuk answers, oblivious to Damien's idea. Stella gasps, seemingly putting two and two together.
I'm going to get this camera to the ship and send the feed to command. Then I'm going to activate the launch sequence.
Damien explains his plan. Stella quietly pleads with him not to as the Martians grow closer.
The launch sequence won't function without the coolant tanks. It'll blow itself apart. I know. Do you need us to buy you some time?
Luchuk is heard getting up as well, and Stella sighs, realizing that there's no use arguing against Damien.
Do whatever you can do. Sergey and Maxim are smart enough to know. I can get back there easily. I'll get this sent out, so command knows what kind of fucked up shit is down here.
Stella and Luchuk were in silent agreement. When the Martians opened the cell door, the three of them charged into them, catching all of them off guard. Damien made a break for it with the camera, as the others did what they could to hold him back. After a short scuffle, Luchuk pained screams echoed through the damp, dark corridors before it turned to eerie gurgling, as I could only assume his body was defiled and ripped into endless shreds. Thankfully, Damien didn't turn the camera back to look. He kept going through the caves, reaching the massive area Journey would encounter a decade later, then running into the farming rooms. I knew he'd make it, but the tense sounds of the creatures crawling across the halls right behind him, I don't know how he had the courage to keep running. Past a familiar shrine, adorned with a Martian's mangled corpse, indicating the recent sacrifice, and into the natural formations of the cave, until the distant beams of the sun were shining through the crack in the surface. The flag of the USSR was still firmly attached to its flagpole. Damien ripped it from the ground and finally glanced behind him with the camera. He swung the pole with all of his strength as one of the Martians came to the surface, knocking them back into the others in a pile. Taking the advantage while they were down, he speared the pole through all five of them, slicing into their scaled flesh and sending their blood flying with an audible yell. Victorious, Damien continued his sprints towards the craft, having bought himself time. In the distance, it came into view, Damien clutching the camera tightly in his hand. I could hear more scampering behind him. They were back on track. He quickly undid the seal, pulling the hatch and climbing inside. Before he could close it, one of the Martians dived into the opening, becoming trapped with him inside. The noises outside stopped. It was clear they didn't want to risk destroying the spacecraft. Damien swung at the monster inside of the craft, knocking him to the ground. He took a moment to show the view outside from the interior of the shuttle, before speaking one last time.
If this thing is still on, stay the fuck away from here. You got that?
The feat finally ends as Damien presumably hooked up the camera to send back all of the footage it had obtained. The rest of the Soviets' records showed that the craft stopped sending any signals 8 minutes later, indicating its destruction in the failed takeoff. The Soviets were dumbfounded and horrified. All of their remaining reports indicate the absolute chaos they devolved into after. Hell, it may have even contributed to the collapse of the Union for all I know. Thoughts of many people believing it may be best to destroy nations to hide the truth. Whatever the case is, Russia isn't even aware of this. Everyone assigned around that time either went into isolation, assumed new identities, or took their lives. After I saw it, after I took it all in, I didn't know what to do anymore. The Martians are not only aware of us, they almost definitely were attempting to rebuild that spacecraft. God knows what the hell they'd do if they got here. Even if we have the upper hand, who knows how many lives would be lost. Other than that, there was nothing more I could find from the Soviets. I tried looking for information from other space agencies, and there's absolutely nothing I could find. That was until I looked back at us. Back at NASA. I mentioned earlier that it would be impossible to just glass or nuke the planet. I stand by that statement. You see, I found out why NASA kept sending rovers to Mars. Why we keep sending things up to that planet that those creatures could just use against us. We can't launch a nuke and hope it kills them. It's too precise of a projection. What we can do is send something that they wouldn't even think twice about. Something that they would unknowingly take into the heart of their people. A Trojan horse. Remember back when I first decided to tell you all about this? The rover Curiosity? She's still active. The Martians took her back into their cave. And she's still sending feeds. They took it to the cave. The one that all had found before and fallen victim to. They want to show us another sacrifice. They want to show Curiosity her first and only blood show before they destroy her. The Martians are preparing for it. They should perform their ritual sometime next week. And Curiosity is ready. Ready to do what she was always destined to do. I can only hope she pulls this off. So, that's how it is. You'd expect something huge to come from our discovery. The second revolution of astronomical science was set to take hold when we met life from the stars. We met it so close to home, and this is how it ends. Not with greeting or apology, but massacre. I still debate with myself if there was something else we could have done. Sometimes I wonder, had Yakov not killed that Martian, would we be in this situation? Or were these hostilities inevitable? Could this have ended with two races uniting against the sky? I'll never know. Nobody will ever know. It's too late to turn back. Not just for me, but for us. Whether or not we did the right thing is another question entirely. I'm afraid this will be my last post on this topic, so let me get everything out of the way before I start. Over the past month, I found myself involved in the discovery of life on Mars and the horrid implications of their hostility. I still don't understand the most of it. I think that's for future generations to figure out. We never deciphered any of their writing, nor did we bother to study their language. The Martians' culture is something that another person will get to understand. Their cycle of daily slaughter, the strange kindness displayed by the few, we'll never realize what any of it means. And it's our fault. I don't know if we did the right thing. That's for you to decide. First, a short recap. I'm a scientist working at NASA, and I've gotten to witness our several meetings with the enigmatic reptilians known as Martians. These creatures were responsible for the destruction of Spirit and Opportunity, 2 rovers we launched in 2004. I later found out that we had seen them before, once with a lander, and the second time with a secret rover I named Journey. Journey's footage showed proof that the Soviets had not only landed on Mars, but apparently had landed people on the planet. My dive into that gave me a full video of most events that transpired. More worryingly, it proved the theory I had been trying to ignore. The Martians were trying to get to Earth. After I posted that, I discovered that one of our rovers, Curiosity, had been captured by the creatures, and that she may just hold the key to humanity's safety. Now, on to what transpired since. The rover Curiosity was equipped with a hidden compartment, one that not even her engineers knew of. Inside were several toxins and explosives, all extremely powerful and tiny in scale. You see, in the event she was taken, we had a plan. By our luck, the Martians scooped her up and took her to their hive, exactly as we had planned for. Curiosity was left inside of the shrine room while the creatures awaited their ceremony, and that's when we had to decide. Curiosity was capable of wiping them out. The toxins would rapidly destroy cellular structures and dissolve easily into water. The explosives would be laid out at strategic locations, making the hive susceptible to a remote detonation intended to ensure their fates. 25 people got to decide the fate of an intelligent species. I wasn't among them, and I don't envy any of the men and women who had to make that choice. The vote was close, 14-4 to 11 against. In the end, however, they had our answer. We were to proceed with the plan. Curiosity slowly made her way down the farming sector of the hive, occasionally piercing a fruit with a lethal poison at our discretion. The Martians that did notice her paid no mind, even when she entered the central hub. From there, she took every source of water she could find, dousing them with the toxin. One by one, each pool of water was laced with the lethal poison. When ingested, it was intended to target many systems of the body, more than necessary in case their biology is extremely different, and rapidly shutting them down as painlessly as it could. In some other spots, she laid down one of the microscopic explosives. One of the creatures took notice of the poisoning, almost threatening to destroy the rover. Fortunately, they walked to the pond and scooped up the water with their hands, 4 scaly fingers ending in sharp daggers. Cusping the liquid, they slid it into their throat and swallowed. The result was unexpected. After mere seconds, the Martians' eyes expressed myriads of pain as the poison began its work. They fell over, clutching their head, shivering and spasming before their jaw unhinged in a horrifically silent scream of unbridled suffering. They kicked the pond and smashed it into the floor, the jagged movements reminiscent of a stroke victim. Curiosity simply continued on, emotionless to the torture having befallen the creature. Most of the crew was emotionless too. Turning the camera back for one last glance, the Martian, having gathered the attention of others with their screaming, was bashing their skull against the rock walls. staining it with blood in a desperate bid to stop the pain. Finally, they fell to their knees and collapsed, dead on the cavern floor. We had worried the toxins wouldn't work. Turns out, they worked too well. Regardless, she had a mission to do. We had a mission to do. Carrying on through tunnel after tunnel, she encountered resistance when what I assume is one of their priests arrived, fury in his stare. He lunged at the rover, ready to strike her down. We couldn't react in time due to the delay, but we didn't have to. Luck remained on our side. The priest pricked himself on the grasp of curiosity, allowing the poison to enter his body. We didn't stay to watch this time. Apparently, that was enough to send the majority of Martians into submissive fear of curiosity. None dared get close to her, clearing her path through the tunnels. Going deeper, she found a group of the creatures huddled around a large blossoming flower. It resembled a rose, except it was tinted a strange hue of pink, tinted slightly gray. A small Martian, presumably a child, was sat atop. The crowd was too entranced to notice as curiosity entered the next room. This room was simply breathtaking. It opened to a massive expanse reaching hundreds of meters in all directions. Most of the room was an underground lake, water reflecting the glittering crystals that lined the ceiling, and the crystals themselves shining the reflection of curiosity's gaze back down into the water. There was no telling how deep the lake went. We couldn't risk getting her close enough to see. The best guess we have is a couple hundred meters of clear and pristinely clean water stretching down into the crust of Mars. It was definitely their primary water source, and a decision was made to dump most of the remaining toxins into this lake, keeping a few on hand just in case. With that, curiosity turned back through the flower room and into the central hub, where she was noticed by Leader. I knew it was him. I just knew it, even from his faraway eyes. I could tell who it was. I think the rest of us did too. Leader stormed towards the rover in fury, lifting her up and carrying her with his strength. Beside him, many more Martians began to follow him obediently. It was time for their ritual. The grand scale of the water room was outdone by the temple, which had been substantially increased in size and grandeur since the late 90s. Hundreds to thousands of chairs were positioned across the delicate pavement, each carved to fit the stature of the Martians. Engraved into each obsidian seat were symbols much like the ones on the prism seen before. As Leader made his way to the centerpiece, the Martians filtered in through the numerous entryways, all taking their place on the finely crafted thrones. Decorating the center shrine were distinct human bones, all of them seared into unrecognizable patterns of glory, celebrating their deaths. Curiosity was stationed on top of a large slab to prevent her escape as Leader awaited the sacrifices. From the main entrance emerged a group of Martians wearing cloaks of tough fabric, likely salvaged from the suits brought by the Soviets. The group forced along 5 blindfolded individuals, only 2 of whom were continuing to put up any resistance. The other 3 marched in seemingly reluctance, although knowledgeable of the inevitability of their fates. They reached the expanded altar, and one by one the tributes were forced onto the stone and had their arms and legs spread out to the sides and held down with a makeshift chain. Curiosity zoomed in on the preparation, revealing the intricacies of the ritual being performed. The priests made swift yet smooth motions, clearly accustomed to the movement involved with this process. We contemplated detonating the explosives while they worked, but decided to wait instead, keeping the small devices ready to activate at a moment's notice. This would be the last thing we'd ever see from the Martians, so I suppose we didn't want to waste it. With the tributes prepared, Leader picked up one of the larger bones resting against the altar He showed it to the crowd, to their silent yet defeating glee, then held it in front of Curiosity's camera. He grasped it tightly, glaring into the lens with burning, unending hatred, before swiftly turning around and slamming the bone into the skull of the leftmost sacrifice, cracking apart the scales to reveal the squishy interior caked with blood. The leader continued to slam the blunt end into the now dead Martian's head, flattening it and splattering himself in blood with each blow. This went on for minutes, the crowd in the distance visibly cheering him on. As before, I could make out a solitary few individuals who seemed as disgusted with the brutality as I was. Finally, leader finished the sacrifice, resting the bone on top of the deceased's neck. He reached down to retrieve a second bone and moved to the rightmost victim, one of the strugglers. Leader once again displayed the weapon to the camera, ensuring Curiosity had a long, intense gaze with the club. With one slash, he tore into the next target's chest, ripping open a sizable hole in the center of their abdomen. The tribute screamed and thrashed against the chains to no use as Leader struck the bone into the gaping wound and stirred it like one would prepare a soup. This was the point most of us looked away. Not me. I kept my focus on what was unfolding, a reminder to myself that we did what we had to. If they were willing to employ such torture against their own, then humans who they hated so vehemently, they had to be stopped. Next to go was the victim in the middle. While we debated on activating the explosives and saving us the horror of witnessing the ritual, Leader started what I assume is some sort of recital or prayer. This continued for a while, the audience seen mimicking his movements and speech. We had seen enough, I heard being argued. I said nothing as the middle victim was promptly eviscerated by Leader's bladed claws. By the time he had finished, it was more than enough for the rest of us. I watched somberly as Curiosity was instructed to detonate the explosives. During the 6-minute delay, Leader gestured to the remaining sacrifices, and then to Curiosity, as if to taunt her. He made no moves, simply waiting for a response. From what I can tell, it seemed that he wanted us to decide who dies next. Something we never did. Time marched on, Leader growing ever more impatient, unaware of what was to come. And then, just like that, the feet cut to white as the explosives did their work, traversing throughout the caverns as they had been placed to do. Curiosity's signal was lost, as she presumably perished in the detonation. And really, that was it. Just like that, it was all over. It felt anticlimactic, because it was. I can't describe the emptiness that filled me after the fact. I thought we'd see something new from them before their end. Most of all, it was the loss of Curiosity that struck me. It wasn't like the other rovers who had died in their discoveries. Curiosity may have saved the world. She did what we had to, and she'd be lost because of it. Nobody would know the truth of her demise, relegated to a system failure that never happened. The world would remain blind to her sacrifice. That's what hit me hardest. After that, there wasn't much left to do. Files were expunged, records redacted or deleted outright. Video files from the past burned and left as ash. Payments made to keep people quiet. Many resignations along with them, myself included. I couldn't keep working, and the stars knowing all of this, then being expected to focus on the mundane. I just can't do that, as I'm sure you no doubt understand. I kept in contact with colleagues, but that was it for me. I patiently awaited the announcement of Curiosity's failure. It never happened though. Last night, I received a call from a close friend who was still working at NASA. It was about curiosity. Just when they had prepared a cover story, she responded to a status request. By some impossible miracle, curiosity had survived, almost entirely intact. She was in a dark, unknown cavern, and with nothing else to do, she was sent onward down the cold, lifeless path, coming into view of a light. It was an exit to the cave, leading to the surface, beams of the sun gleaming down onto her metal skin. I was relieved beyond belief to hear her survival. We don't know how it happened, nor how she ended up where she did. But nobody cared about that. Curiosity was alive and well, and could continue to explore safely without fear. In celebration, she took a few photos of the surrounding landscape. The desert red of Mars that I've come to fear and love at the same time. Dunes and hills scattered around, slight imperfections in the crust. After all that had happened, it was beautiful. One of the photos she took was of the cavern behind her. A wide shot that appeared as a still frame from a carefully directed film. Contrasting the bright lights of the surface was the dark abyss of the cavern. I couldn't take my eyes off of this image. It astounded me in a way, with the prospect of triumph it held, as curiosity proudly stood alive against all odds. There's only one thing that soured this moment. The dozens of crimson dots staring from the darkness. I was dead, standing in some unnatural place. It was pitch black, stretching for an eternity. The only light in this place emanated from my body. I felt like I was floating, like my body did not physically exist. I ran in every direction, screaming for help, never seeing another soul or light. I finally gave up, sitting down, ready to spend eternity in isolation. I suddenly began to sense the same fear and despair that I felt in the presence of the giant we had killed. Please, God, no, I thought. On cue. The giant walked out of the darkness. It looked the same, but its eyes were now yellow with red pupils. It bent down to look me in the eyes, licking its lips and giving me a look of disgust.
You sent me to this place, you and your filthy god. Now that you're here, I will make you pay for eternity,
it said, as its hands was inches from snatching me up. I saw a flash of light dart between us. I shot upward, hearing the beast yell a guttural cry of agony. I was suddenly back in my bed, drenched in sweat, feeling like I had just gone somewhere I should not have been. Vasquez, asleep in the other room, awoke to the sound of freedom being delivered at Mach 2. The shipping container I'm in rattles so hard that my gear falls off the hooks on the wall. Bagram is one of 2 main US coalition air bases in Afghanistan, so jets and bombers take off at all hours of the night. Son of a bitch, shut the hell up, Staff Sergeant Vasquez yells, as he throws something at the ceiling, leaning over a plywood wall, smiling and stroking my hair. Wake up, young one. I threaten to bash his skull in, knowing full well he can snap me like a twig. He laughs and slowly lowers below the plywood. The sun is barely up and the temperature is already in the mid-90s. My fire-resistant ACUs make it feel 20 degrees hotter. I squint, keeping my eyes down to avoid the rising sun while putting my Oakleys on. In the daylight, it becomes apparent that I stick out like a sore thumb. Everyone around me wears whatever they want. Most have baseball caps on and have beards. Some have uniforms on with no identifying patches. Some wear cargo pants and polos. I'm one of the few in ACUs. My bat scroll on my left arm, clean shaven and short hair. Rangers are one of the few spec op units that wear uniforms and abide by shaving and hair length standards. I'm 24 and a second lieutenant. The gold bar on my chest might as well be a bullseye. Being a second lieutenant in BAT is like being a freshman that is captain of the varsity football team. I technically outrank the enlisted soldiers and NCOs, but I lean heavily on them for mentorship. I prepare myself for the daily hazing rituals, knowing I better be ready to laugh at myself. I step into the talk to check in with Lieutenant Colonel Williams, who is leaning over a soldier, staring at a computer screen that is showing troop movements. Activity in the talk is much slower today. Most soldiers stand behind screens, dipping or drinking coffee. Some are talking about football, others look like zombies in need of a break. The place feels different than the night before. I wonder how much they actually know about what happened the previous night. They couldn't know, or they wouldn't be at peace. There's no going back from what I saw. It was weighing on me heavily. Lieutenant Colonel Williams interrupts my thoughts, nodding at me and motioning for me to follow him. He is tall, 6'4", thin, with graying hair on his temples. He looks like he probably runs marathons, but has a slight limp. Word is that he had lost most of his right calf in an IED attack. He still walks so fast that I had to power walk to keep up. He pulls me into the conference room and tells me to sit down. Lieutenant, Captain Stone told me you did a great job last night, and that I can trust you. The way he said, "trust you," led me to believe there was more behind what he was saying. I'm giving first platoon to another lieutenant that is en route. I started to object, but he holds his hands up to stop me. This is not a punishment. You'll get a platoon eventually. For now, you're taking over the PSD team, and you'll augment some of the team guys while they're recovering from the last few months. He gives me a look of reassurance that lets me know there is more to this. I thank him and accept my fate. He tells me to get unpacked and settled, and that he'll find me for my next mission. He hands me a phone, saying, "It's secure. Well, it's secure from the Hajis." I wonder what he means by secure from the Hajis. I didn't understand who else we needed secure comms from at the time. I leave the talk dejected. PSD are the three letters that most don't want to hear when deployed. PSD stands for Personnel Security Detachment. It's the military's less fancy version of what you see the Secret Service doing on TV. It's a great job when you're in garrison. I've planned and led the security for multiple presidents and even for the Queen of England during visits throughout the West. But while deployed, I want a platoon. I want to be the blunt instrument, not the bulletproof vest. I couldn't shake the feeling I got from him though. He was trying to tell me something, and telling me I was augmenting team guys was really strange. That's not typically something an officer would do. We're leaders and managers, not extra guns. Also, team guys normally don't get augmented unless something catastrophic happens. The next month went by in a blur, as I spent 16 hours a day escorting general officers and high-ranking politicians around Afghanistan. I sat in on meetings that decided the fate of the nation. I fought through a couple of attacks on our principals, narrowly missed a VB IED, and even took a round to the arm. None of it seemed to matter though. It wasn't even exciting. I spent most days thinking about what that giant was, and thinking that I should be hunting the real evil of this world. It's like the Neff left a scar on my soul. I couldn't shake it from my thoughts. And where the hell was David in 357? He said he would talk to me about the giants they killed. but I haven't seen them since my first night in country. Then, something happened that changed my life forever. A few guys walk into my office. Two of the guys look completely out of place. They have khakis and black polos on that say CBTI. Both are a bit plump. They aren't CIA operatives and clearly aren't soldiers. The third is a spook. He has on cargo pants, a black polo, and a black cap. He has the look. Spooks stick out like a sore thumb. The spook shakes my hand and takes his cap and sunglasses off, introducing himself as Jake. He looks like a legitimately good guy. He has balding gray hair, is about 5'10", and has the friendliest smile you'll ever see. He looks like everyone's favorite uncle. He isn't being distant and isn't talking to me like I'm retarded. A far cry from the CIA asshats that I had interacted with thus far. He looks me in the eye and says, "Mike, I'm going to be needing you and Vasquez for the next couple of months to run security for an operation we have going on." It's jarring to hear my first name. As far as I know, only Lieutenant Colonel Williams is aware that my name is Mike. I try to hide my angst and ask, "What for, sir? What's the mission? I need to run it by Lieutenant Colonel Williams since we're the only dedicated SOCOM PSD team in the area." "Absolutely, run it by your boss, but it's already been settled. He's aware," he says. He's avoiding my question about the mission. "What's the mission entail? I've got a 10-man team, so I need specifics to allocate the proper number of personnel," I said. Jake responded, "Just you and Vasquez. These gentlemen will fill you in on the mission." He gets up and gives me a very nerdy fist bump, smiling, and says, "I'll see you boys at 1900. Meet me at the helipads. We're going to be working nights." He then walks out of the talk without glancing back. The other two guys fill us in on the basics. We're going to be dropping orbs around the country to test out a new technology we developed. I know at that point to stop asking questions. I'm not going to get anything from them. They leave the talk and Vasquez gives me a funny look. "Who the hell were those two?" I ask. Jake is clearly a spook, but those two look like they work at my uncle's engineering firm. Vasquez filled me in on CIA contractors. The three-letter agencies hire a lot of civilians for technology development, implementation, and intelligence gathering. CIA contractors are much more rampant than you realize. If you have worked at a major engineering firm or technology provider to the DoD, then you've worked with or for someone that has been contracted by the CIA at some point. You've clearly picked up the distrust between the Spec Ops community and CIA. It's not always that way. There are a lot of great CIA agents that try to take care of us. The problem is that the majority of joint CIA Spec Ops missions leave one side wanting for intel, and that's always the Spec Ops side. We're generally treated like blunt instruments, whose only value is to hammer the nail. I would distrust them, even if they hadn't fucked us over by failing to inform us of the giant. Our missions and core beliefs are just vastly different. The Spec Ops community works in the shadows to eliminate threats to the United States and our allies. We can't publicly share what we do, but we have zero interest in misleading the general public. I don't want you to have to worry about the evil people and creatures of this world. But honestly, I would like for that to be your choice. When dealing with the Nefs, there were good and bad elements within the CIA. It just took us a while to see which side most were on. I talked to Lieutenant Colonel Williams, who confirmed what Jake said. Vasquez and I were tasked out to Jake and his team for the next couple of months. He said something strange as I was leaving the talk. "LT, Jake is one of the good guys. Trust him entirely and ensure he comes back in one piece." I step out into the bright sun, throwing my patrol cap and Oakleys on. I stare off into space, thinking about what he said. Why would he tell me a CIA agent is one of the good guys, and to trust him entirely? Aren't we all on the same team? The CIA can be dicks, but they're still on our side, right? I meet Jake on the helipad at 1900. The sun is starting to go down. I recognize the gunner. He was in the 160th helicopter that picked us up after we killed the giant. He nods at me as we board the Blackhawk. The rotors push us upward, the helicopter rocking forward a bit as we lift it to a few hundred feet in seconds, the nose stabilizing as we speed forward. There is always something comforting about riding in Blackhawks. For some reason, I get a better rush from leaning out the door than I do jumping out of a plane. It doesn't hurt that the 160th has the best pilots in the world. My pilot, John, is a Warrant Officer 3 and an artist in the sky. We shoot forward, flying nap of the earth, 200 miles per hour, just above the tree line. I clip a carabiner to my belt and pants, leaning out the door, feeling like I could reach down and touch the top of the trees. We sneak in and out of the canyons, helicopter pitch black, as John flies only aided by knots. We travel for about an hour as I hear Jake say,
Right here, put it down above that cave.
We step out of the bird, Vasquez and I sprinting in opposite directions, diving into the prone and facing the tree line. One of the engineers pulls a small robot out that looks like the kind you see bomb squads use in the States. Using a remote control, he wheels it down the cave opening. It's carrying a large crate of small orbs that look like they are full of wiring. The robot returns and we all load the Blackhawk, flying up into the brisk mountain air. Periodically, the engineers drop loads of orbs off the side of the Blackhawk. No one speaks the entire trip. They just monitor their computers, which Vasquez and I aren't allowed to view. This happened every night for the next couple of months. For 12 hours, we headed out over the countryside, dropping orbs and sending the robot into caves. I had no idea what the hell was going on. Vasquez and I were frustrated because we were wasting valuable time in country staring the tops of trees and pulling security for a robot. Most nights, we didn't even return to Bagroom. We landed at some desolate FOB, leaving from there the following night. Jake would smoke cigars with me after missions. He would talk about his family back home, or about how he joined the CIA to protect America and reveal the truth. Truth with a capital T, he would say. He had a necklace, a crucifix with rosary beads that was always wrapped around his wrist. He constantly fidgeted with the crucifix between his fingers. It was like he was always nervous of some unseen force. He would talk to me about my high school, which made me supremely uncomfortable at first, because no one knew where I had gone. It was a private Christian high school in Missouri. He'd talk to me about how I played football and basketball there. We'd have philosophical debates about Christianity, since he was Catholic and I was Protestant. Always respectful and always interesting. I'm not sure when it happened, but he became like an uncle to me. At the end of our conversations, he would always pause and look me in the eye. He wanted to tell me something about the mission, but just couldn't do it. One night, once we were nearly complete with the mission, he came to my hooch late at night. It must have been 0200. The only activity in the COP was soldiers pulling security in the towers and fighting positions. He tells me to ditch my electronics and rubs some sort of wand over me like security in an airport. We then walked outside the COP, which makes me highly uncomfortable. We aren't exactly in Missouri. He walks over to a shallow cavern and drops a few of the orbs we had been leaving around the country. I watch as a small green light comes on each one. They suddenly roll forward, spacing out and coming to a rest at opposite ends of the cavern. Sitting on a rock, he pulls out his laptop and motions for me to look. It was the cavern we were sitting in. It was like staring at a 300-degree picture online. The cavern was completely mapped out. He moves the joystick, steering his way around the cavern. I could see in great detail the granite walls and even the small bugs that were flying around, frozen in mid-air. It finally dawns on me as I look at him. Holy shit, we've been mapping the caves of Afghanistan. Yup, it's not perfect. Some of the deeper caverns have dark spots, but it's a start. My team thinks we've covered about 30% of the cave systems. He says. I'm blown away. This is going to be huge. Bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. We're going to make some major progress.